steps up. Now we'll throw it for Monanga, and it's incomplete. Oh, it's tipped. It's intercepted. It was tipped into the hands of Hancock, and Hancock along the near sideline. He's got a blocker. One man to beat. Flags come flying in, and Hancock is into the end zone. Right now, touchdown, Ohio State.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
All right, Matt, and some spin cycles there. We've had some here. We got a big stage for Kansas with the ball up by 3, and Jason Bean wants to throw. Deep shot. Arnold! He is gone!
Oh my goodness.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
This is Price bringing it out, trying to return of his own. Now Jadarian Price turning on the Jets. 20-10 touchdown Notre Dame.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
As this is Sione Faki on the direct snap, and Faki around the outside. There it goes down the sideline. Sione Faki, touchdown Utah.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Here's Schrader in a huge hole. He'll take it in, and Missouri's got a 2-score lead.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Missouri still trying to get set from the end zone. Cook throws one, and it's intercepted. House call for Major Burns. And LSU is going to escape Columbia with a win.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on 365 Sports on this Monday, the 19th of February. Paul Catalina is to my left, Craig Smoak to my right. I'm David Smoak in the studio, Emery Winter and Garrett Ross, and this is 365 Sports. A lot to get to, including Baylor looking for another position coach, the Nick Saban atomic bomb effect on coaching staffs in America. We will get to that. A massive game tonight in the Big 12 with Iowa State Houston. We have a guest, Chris Gardner, to discuss that with us. And then also on top of that, a lot of college athletics and sports, including, remember the story last week that college football playoff had reached an agreement, although not official, but reached an agreement with ESPN for $7.6 billion or whatever it was. And then this story from Ross Dellinger. In a memo sent to AD's MAC Commissioner John Steinbrecher, a college football management committee member, said reports of any college football playoff agreeing to a TV deal are incorrect. College football leaders have not even reviewed a draft of the deal, per an email obtained by Yahoo Sports, which leads us into this, and then we'll discuss this. Leaders enter a crucial week. In fact, tomorrow the presidents meet, commissioners meet Wednesday, further examine the unresolved matters related to the college football playoff, future revenue sharing model, governance structure, and the 5-7-6-6 format. How does that story go out there, what was seemingly 72 plus hours, and then Ross gets the email to say, hey, wait a minute.
And the weird thing about me is no one's retracted it yet. Like, no one, like The Athletic, who's great, ESPN, they still have it up as sources reporting that this is done. But if it's done and they haven't even seen a term sheet yet,
how can you agree on what you don't know?
Yeah, that's what I don't. That's what I don't understand. That's kind of bizarre that would get out there, and then you've got at least one conference that's sending out memos saying like, "Hey, we haven't seen anything yet," unless
he's been left out.
Unless they left out the MAC, like
which is a group of five, so you don't know.
But I don't think that would happen.
You remember last week when I kept getting hung up on that word inevitable when Ross was talking about the NCAA tournament? This is why. This is why. Because you sit there and you put out stuff, and I'm not talking about him specifically, but we see reports sometimes that are just like, yeah, this is happening, and then it doesn't really come to fruition. And so that seemed like, a pretty big deal to report that actually is nowhere even close to being finished. So, I'd like to know how that happens as well. What people are being fed or being led to believe that you not only report it, but you report it as though it's across the board a thing that's happening. And so, for that to just be out there like some, big piece of news or big bomb throughout college sports or college football, and then to actually it a couple of days later, and then everybody go, oh, well, dang, that was right. That's crazy. That's wild. I don't know if that's the state of journalism, the state of people following journalism, or what, but that seems like a pretty big miss or just misreport or however you want to categorize that. I don't know. I know that Ross and various others do their due diligence and have their sources and all of that, but the college football media that reported on that did not really, I guess, accurately portray what was actually happening, and you can, I guess, if you want to speculate on the reasons as to why people are feeding that type of information. We know that there's the whole to-do about, in that report, ESPN, if that's the same one that I'm thinking of, ESPN having all of the playoff, right? Isn't that basically the same thing?
Yeah.
And so everybody flipped their lids. So put two and two together. Who wouldn't be happy about that being the case? That maybe would want to try and disrupt that, or who wants to say, well wait a second. I don't know. There's a lot of ways you could look at this and why that was reported the way that it was. But, it was not true in the end is ultimately what it wasn't. So that is kind of strange that's how that was put out there.
Well, it is, again, Ross Dellinger, who joined us at the end of last week, was on with one of those topics, was the one reason we had him on. And then good for him to say, wait a minute, this is not the case. Baylor is looking for an offensive line coach. Chris Kapilovic, who was on this show, was at Michigan State, hired by Dave Aranda, is now headed to Alabama. This is part of the shrapnel of the atomic bomb effect of Nick Saban leaving. Remember, DeBoer, Washington, his offensive coordinator, Grubb, the offensive line coach. Now they're back in the NFL, or back in Seattle now with the NFL, which means Alabama had some job openings, including their offensive line coach. So Baylor now will look for an offensive line coach, and I don't know if it's even in the conversation, but I haven't had anybody respond to me about Jared Anderson, who's the tight ends coach, who was at TCU and UTSA. Once was an offensive line coach. If he has any interest, or is he a factor or a candidate in replacing Kapilovic, but that offensive line job at Baylor is now available again.
Yeah, and this is, I told you this before the show started. I'm enjoying, even though I know that it's probably stressful for a lot of people, but I think Nick Saban's retirement is one of the best things to happen to college football recently, in that it has forced people, athletic directors and leaders of these schools, to think outside the box and hiring coaches. And then when you hire someone like Kalen DeBoer, who Kalen DeBoer has really because he came, from the Division II level just 5-6 years ago to now, he has no ties, or he doesn't feel it's absolutely necessary for me to hire this group of retread coaches or make sure that I have this guy. And then they're just going about hiring the people that he likes or thinks works best with him. And then that has, tentacle effects throughout the thing. Now, I do think it sucks that, for the smaller schools that are losing their head coaches to be a tight ends coach somewhere or a coordinator somewhere. But on the other end, I do like sometimes when you kind of grab the rug and shake, and then the dust falls off and whatever is supposed to be there stays. So I've been very intrigued by how all this has gone on. For Baylor, it's a blow, obviously. You don't want to be searching for a new offensive line coach when you just hired the guy 2 months ago. That's just, I guess, a part of this little journey into 2024 that you weren't expecting, that you thought you'd check that box, and now you're
back to the drawing board, and maybe it is as simple as moving somebody on staff like Jared Anderson. Maybe it's not, and who's available and who's realistic, and who can come in and pick up with, getting the relationship building going and learning the offense that Jake Spavital's running, all of those different types of things. But, yeah, it sucks. I mean, it's mid-February. It's past mid-February, actually, and you got spring ball less than a month away, and a hire that you just made who is just getting settled in and was just on the radio with us 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whenever it was, talking about how now they finally got the time set aside so where they can start relationship building, and that was a big focus and this and that. And it was weird as I kept intending to write an article about that interview, and for some reason I just kept putting it off. And just like I'd go like, no, I want to write about this instead. I want to write about this other interviewer. I want to write about what Mack Rhodes said. And I just never got around to writing that one specifically. And now I'm glad I didn't. I mean, I don't know if that was intuition or if that was just blind luck, but it wouldn't have mattered in the long run because he's not even going to coach a single practice for Baylor, which is wild. But, that's an interesting hire for Kalen DeBoer, who's obviously got a lot of pressure on his shoulders to round out this staff, and there's been some hiccups along the way. There's a lot of, teeth grinding right now in Tuscaloosa of just not panic or anything like that, but just it's a little bit more of a hard job than you'd expect, right? Filling out this staff for mighty Alabama. It's taken some time, so they've got their guy. I'm sure they're somewhat happy about that. I know on the flip side that whenever he got hired, there were plenty of Michigan State fans who were panning the hire and, hey, Baylor, hey, thanks for taking him off our hands. And I've even seen some Michigan State fans, I guess, were so displeased with his performance that they're like, Baylor lucked out. Yeah. Congratulations, Alabama. So I don't know what's true in the long run. Obviously, if Kalen DeBoer thinks he's a good way to go, then that says something. But, yeah, for Dave Aranda, what a blow. And now it's back to the drawing board, which is just unfortunate because you finally felt like you'd gotten your staff finalized.
All right, so there's that. So, okay, the wheels on the bus go round and round because Alabama also lost their offensive coordinator, among others, their tight ends coach. Georgia Southern now looking for an offensive coordinator. Brian Ellis has been hired by Bama as the tight ends coach. Ex-UAB quarterback was at Georgia Southern, ranked 18th nationally in total offense a couple of years ago. He's been a quarterback coach at USC, at Western Kentucky, of course, where they fling it around quite a bit. So there's another job now that opens at Georgia Southern because Alabama was filling yet another part of their staff. Steve Sarkeesian, congratulations. His contract, and multiple Texas writers, columnists, etc. had this. Here's his contract. And again, there's some details to some of this. 2 cars, private jet, I think it's like 20 hours a year. Game tickets up to, I believe, what could be 12 for a home game, and maybe even that for bowl games, championship games, a country club membership. And then he was making just under $6 million. His contract nearly doubles, 24 through 2030. Steve Sarkeesian led Texas to the semifinals, won the Big 12, headed to the SEC, and he has gotten himself the bag and paid.
I wouldn't get out of bed for less than 50 hours a year of private jet use, but if that's fine with you, Steve, then move on with your life and your pathetic $10 million a year. No, that's an unbelievable contract, and it sets them up well going to the SEC. I mentioned this earlier. Soki, you and I always kind of joke about how Texas kind of has things happen around them that are lucky, and like they're now finally
they take advantage of it.
Yeah. Well, they didn't, like, for a long time in the Big 12, they didn't take advantage of anything until the last year in it. But one thing happened around them that's pretty big. The 2 biggest mountains to climb in the SEC are Georgia and the Kirby Smart Mountain and the Nick Saban Mountain. Well, the Nick Saban Mountain just got a lot smaller.
Well, who they beat the Nick Saban Mountain.
Beat already. So going in, so this is, all just good news. And this is the first time, had they given Tom Herman, I know they, after the 10-win season, they gave him an extension, but had they given Tom Herman an extension like this, it would have been crazy. But coming off a college football playoff appearance, coming off what are really amazing recruiting classes, and actually putting players into the NFL, which could be as many as like 3 to 4 first rounders and at least 1 and probably 3 more in the early second round, where they weren't doing that for a long time. This is a strong move for Texas as they move in the SEC, and I think it gives Steve Sarkeesian the comfort he's going to need as he moves into what's going to be a really tough league.
Congratulations to Sark. I mean, that's a job well done and deserved when you take a team to the college football playoff, and you've got all the things that are moving in your direction the way that Paul laid them out. I mean, the recruiting's at a top-notch level. I know that's been the case with previous staffs, but just all of it, the total package of what's going on right now in Austin is, it's a very positive upward trajectory, and you feel like you're just scratching the surface. And so a guy does what he does, winning the Big 12 in his last year, and then, again, taking you to the CFP in a very competitive game against Washington. He's going to be the guy for a long time. There's no 1 foot in, 1 foot out, kind of wondering how long-term this is going to be. I mean, he's very clearly their guy for the foreseeable future, and so you want to reward him and on the season that they had, but also have him amongst the highest-paid coaches and the peers that he's going to have in the league that they're now joining. I mean, that's what a lot of coaches are making there and about. So I think it's just in line with the performance so far in the program that he's at. And so I've seen a lot of it around, like a lot of kind of fawning over it. And we'd all in a second trade for that type of a contract. But I think that's just kind of business as usual for Texas and for Steve Sarkeesian. Big bucks, big games, big time momentum with that program. And so that's now taken care of. And it's on to now, winning and getting over that CFP hump and getting back into the playoff next year and really asserting yourself in the SEC starting next year. I mean, in line with just all the momentum, I saw a random post about lines for next year, and I couldn't even tell you. It was a very much an in-passing type of thing, but one of the games I saw was Texas is already like a 10.5-point favorite over Oklahoma. And it's weird because I think Oklahoma's fine, but they definitely don't have any of the a shell of the momentum that Texas has rolling into the SEC next year. It's weird. They're still on solid footing, but Texas is in quite the little run right now. So, congrats to Sark. He's done a great job there, and we'll see what he continues to do.
All right, so there is that with Sarkeesian. Congratulations on the deal. And, it kind of reminds me of the momentum of early on in the 2000s when Texas and Mac Brown started gaining steam that led towards a national championship after they finally got over the hump of beating Oklahoma. We'll see if it gets to that point, but they are in a pretty good spot. All right, Arizona has a new AD. Desiree Reed-Francois has been at Missouri. She's now the AD at Arizona. She's expected, in fact, has agreed to a 5-year deal. I've heard different takes on this, that some in Missouri, and again, not everybody's happy with everybody, but that there was a possible, I don't know about push, but that there was some not 100% behind her at Missouri. Arizona needs an AD. There were probably some other candidates that were involved. She ends up getting the job. Robert Robbins, who, of course, has had a tumultuous couple of years, she gets the job. I also saw some of the reaction was that Missouri fans were very disappointed that she was moving on. But congratulations, I believe, becomes at a time when Arizona needs stability. An $140 million plus deficit in their athletic department, she now takes over as the AD at Arizona.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. She inherits a financial mess of which nobody's even sure, and all that came out, how much they actually are in the hole. If it's as much as they said, or it might be a little bit less, or... I
mean, we can't even trust the reporting on the playoff being right, so, who knows?
What we do know is that they're in a financial hole, and that's the reason that Dave Hickey is gone, and it's the reason that Robbins is probably going to be under the gun unless this gets fixed in short order. So we'll see what happens. People... There's no real middle ground on ADs. A lot of the time, you're either completely thrilled with them or you completely hate them. They're kind of like quarterbacks, and that they're great or they're not, and that's all in the eye of the beholder. So we'll see how she does. I know she's an alum going back there, and they've got a lot to work on, and they're entering a new league and financial crisis and all that. So glad that they found someone. I know there's probably a bunch of people who just didn't want to mess with it because you don't want to go in with hey, we are 9 figures in the hole. Please dig us out of it. And you're like, I'd rather go to somebody who's 5 figures in the hole. I don't know, just doing well. I don't need this stress.
She's walking into a challenge, and I kind of like the fact that either others saw that and said no, not that she wasn't the first choice, but she's walking into a challenge, and she's not afraid of it. And I kind of like that. Whether or not it works out for her and also Arizona, I don't know.
I mean, yeah, good luck to her and to Arizona. Don't know and won't pretend to know much about her as an AD and just the background and all that other than what I've read like everybody else. So, yeah, big shoes to jump into, not in terms of what was left there, but in terms of just big shoes for a bunch of big tasks on a big to-do list with big problems for Arizona that need to get sorted out. So get to work is all I can say, I guess, and hope that this is the right choice that can guide Arizona back to having a few less problems than they do on their plate right now. But, yeah, somebody had to have the want to go and help out Arizona, and she's the one, and she's their choice, and so hopefully it's a partnership that works out well for both sides.
Also, we told you George Kliavkoff is out at the end of the month in the Pac-12 too. They have already, and this name came up Friday when the reports were that he was out, that Teresa Gould has now been named as the commissioner of the Pac-12 conference. That's still the name of the conference, despite the fact it's about to be two. She has been a part of the conference recently, and she takes over the job. Talk about walking into a mess, but that is Teresa Gould, who now takes over. In fact, the quote, uniquely qualified to help guide the Pac-12 during its period of unprecedented change in college sports. First female commissioner of an Autonomy 5 conference team, and congratulations to Teresa Gould for getting that opportunity.
Well, hopefully we have some more to chew on when it comes to the playoff. Not so much the TV side of things, which is what we started off the show talking about, was that, the reports last week that ESPN was just going to gobble up and have all the playoff. Obviously, that's not the case. For whatever reasons that was out there like that, we don't know. But what we do know is that the next couple of days, you're going to have your meetings over the playoff and the format and the possibility that could get resolved, right? But Kirk Schultz right there in the thick of things, so we should have some more light shed just in what direction and kind of what temperature that room is when it comes to the new playoff format they're trying to get done, and with the clock ticking in a major way now, less than a year out. So, this is something big on their to-do list in the next couple of days that we should have some more on.
All right, tonight we will have Chris Gardner. He covers University of Houston men's basketball, but we have to mention this because Dennis Dodd around the corner. Dennis Dodd from CBS. Tonight, number now 2 ranked Houston against now number 6 ranked Iowa State in what will be a battle galore at the Fertitta Center in Houston. Both teams, of course, at the top of the Big 12. That game going on tonight. Kelvin Sampson made this comment about a bunch of former players that came back into town for that rout of Texas on Saturday. Larry Mishaw, Hakeem Olajuwon, Marcus Sasser, even Andre Ware, the Heisman Trophy quarterback back in the day. Kendrick Perkins, who I believe went straight from high school to the NBA, was there, and others. Our program is built on roots. We water our roots every year. If you have a good team, have a good year, well, those are flowers. They come and go. It's built in those tough roots, and we keep watering them every year with these guys. In other words, the former, the history. You see players on the sidelines of football games that have had great tradition. They pounded Texas, and that should be an absolute, a war of attrition tonight in Houston with Iowa State and Houston tipping off 8 o'clock on ESPN, K-State, Texas, and Austin on ESPN2 at 8 o'clock.
Texas was not in that game for 1 second. Not 1 second.
Not even the tip.
Not even tip. Over. Tip over. Houston was so locked in, and it wasn't, LJ Cryer was locked in. He couldn't miss.
26 points.
Yeah, it was just, they got it. I think they had 6 guys in double figures. They got points off the bench. They were just, everything was going right for them. And then Texas' season, not that you wouldn't expect, Texas to go down to Houston and lose, especially when, Hakeem and little Romeo and people like that are sitting there watching. It's a big moment for the Houston fans. But to lose that game like they did with the roster that they have continues their very befuddling season. That nothing makes sense about Texas, how they can look like a team that could win. Sometimes you watch them and they look like a team that could win the whole thing. Man, if all these guys play like that, who's going to beat them? And then they'll turn right around, 48 hours later, and they'll just be like, well, we're not here today. Yeah, they're weird. It's such a weird season.
They are hit and miss, erratic, which drives Texas fans, I'm sure Rodney Terry, crazy too. With how they have performed this year.
Yeah, I wonder how often Chris Del Conte is looking at the little list in his pocket of what big name coach that they're inevitably going to hire in a couple of years. I mean, that's kind of what it feels like. Rodney Terry's got time to turn it around, but I mean, we know that wasn't the unanimous choice to begin with after Chris Beard, but he did a great job when he took over. They're going to give him time, but yeah, there's just not a lot of juice with that program, and pretty much everything else around there is operating with that. And so you wonder just what he needs to do to turn it around and make sure that he's getting that Sark type deal, or that he's around to see, all the seeds that were planted for the SEC, because this has been a really tough year for them. And yeah, Houston was fantastic on Saturday. And so wherever you look and you see these little dips or these drops that the Big 12 is going to have with the loss of Oklahoma and Texas, I think on the court, there's probably things like ticket sales or TV ratings or something, that a lot of stuff that I don't know, for some reason become bragging rights for people these days. I don't want to wade that far into it, but from a pure basketball standpoint and chance to win a title standpoint, like the reason we watch, I don't think the Big 12 is missing much because of Houston being in the conference. So that's a testament to Kelvin Sampson and the great job that he's done. Nice win, and that was a good one. But yeah, it now sets up for what should be a tremendous night tonight in the Big 12 with that game against Iowa State. They got a really nice win, and we know in the nightcap, Texas obviously needs a win, and K-State really needs a win too. Yep. Jerome Tang feeling the pressure there as they've hit the skids, and it's not at all what it was like when it was just a big fun party last year for the most part. They've had their struggles, so that's a game where somebody who comes out on the side of that winning is going to be very happy, and the other side is going to be dropping even further down and not feeling real great about the direction of things. By
the way, we need a break here to get to Dennis Dodd. The Big 12 officially announcing their media days, which we had mentioned a couple of different times, including last week, July the 9th and 10th, a Tuesday and Wednesday, at the Allegiant Center in Las Vegas.
Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, which we saw and drove by day after day during our coverage of Super Bowl 58. All right, when we come back, Dennis Dodd on the college football playoff. Not so fast, my friends. What happened with that and more? And this is 365 Sports. IdealMRI.com in the Central Texas marketplace with two things. Finding out what is bothering you. I have this kind of not so sure, and I need to maybe go through another round of trying to figure out why my quad seems weak and sore. My back seems like it's like I got an infection, like in a kidney or something. And then also my back is sore. And is it a sciatic nerve? Is it part of the impingement? I've had an MRI. It's been a couple of years, and it might be time to go back and do that again because it's every day. It doesn't, like a nerve usually calms down after a while. This hasn't been doing that, so it's time for me to dial up Dr. Rob Maxey and get another good look at what is going on. I'm fine, but it is something that I don't want to have to do this every single day for the rest of however long I might live. They can help you find what it is. Whether what my problem is something that's in the lower part of my back, or is it something even different than that, they'll find it. Their MRI machine, state-of-the-art technology, and even better is I know exactly how much it's going to cost. It's $497 or less every single time. The techs and specialists are fantastic. You call to get an appointment. Your doctor must recommend it first. They will be in touch, set it up. Not a long wait, and when you're there, it's not like you'll be waiting for a couple of hours before you're called back into the machine. You'll get the images that night. It's amazing, the business and what they do for you. Ideal MRI in the Central Texas marketplace, just off of I-35 in Waco.
Are you ready to conquer the road in style? Well, folks, you asked for it, and now you've got it. It's Ram Truck Month at Allen Samuels in Waco, and we've got some deals just for you. Get ready to roll with 0% financing for a whopping 72 months on the 2024 Ram 1500 Crew Cab Lone Star. But wait, there's more. We're slashing prices on all the 2023 Ram 1500 Limited Crew Cab 4-wheel drives. Get a jaw-dropping $15,000 off MSRP. Let's show some love to our brave first responders out there. As a token of our appreciation, first responders get an extra $500 off. And let's not forget the Ram 1500, the most luxurious and technologically advanced Ram 1500 ever. So don't miss out on these incredible deals during Ram Truck Month. Swing by Allen Samuels in Waco today and drive home in the truck of your dreams. But hurry, because these offers won't last long. Ram Truck Month is happening now at Allen Samuels.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential. Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, with us on 365 Sports. Dennis, of course, everything college athletics and football, and Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, David Smoak. Dennis, thank you very much. The president's tomorrow, the commissioners on Wednesday. And is it, wait a minute, there were reports that they were done or at least imminent. What happened, in your opinion, with the college football playoff proposal?
Well, the contract is not done. We saw that from, I'm talking about the new TV contract. It was reportedly worth $1.3 billion. It's not even close to being done. And I've got some thoughts on that, but they're going to start to discuss that on Wednesday, the commissioners. And then tomorrow is really going to be interesting with Washington State and Oregon State still holding that vote, trying to use that as the same way Thor uses a hammer to get the best deal they can get going forward. It's really got nothing to do with 5+7 versus 6+6. I think they're holding out, and Kirk Schultz, the Washington State president, says much. They're holding out for Power 5 status. So what does that look like in 2026? I don't think a merger with the Mountain West is going to get them there. But if they start to go out and get a best of the rest conference, or their hope is the ACC breaks up with Florida State now seemingly having to being able to buy their way out of the ACC, that Stanford and Cal come back. It's so layered and it's so dense. It's hard to talk about.
Dennis, I do want your thoughts on the college football playoff contract not being done yet. It did seem strange to me that there was all this talk of getting other partners involved. And given how not only, Fox has doubled down on their college football coverage, CBS went big for the Big Ten, NBC and Peacock is now involved in this, that they wouldn't have multiple buyers in the market or multiple networks to do this, and that would be a solely ESPN and Disney deal. That was a little bizarre to me to hear that news and how it happened seemingly so quickly, especially since it didn't.
Yeah, there's a lot to that too, because basically you had ESPN with a right of first refusal, and they could have matched any other deal that was out there. And I think they want, whether they leaked that to certain people, it was inaccurate about the deal being done to pressure the CFP into getting the deal done. I don't know that, but it is not done. I know there's a faction within the commissioners and the leagues. I know Greg Sankey has stated publicly he would prefer multiple bidders. But I think as a whole, I think they're kind of disappointed with the number that came back, $1.3 billion. When this process started, we were talking about anywhere from 1.5 to 2 billion. And what the market has told them is that, number one, I think the rights holders are kind of running out of money. This is a big, big property. ESPN is saving up for, I think, to renew the NBA and NASCAR. So this is a lot of money that they're trying to save money on. At the same time, we're all transitioning to streaming, and nobody knows what that's going to look like. And let me get back to the heart of the matter in that I think it's coming to being evident with these people that the first round games aren't worth that much. I mean, when you get a possibility, as we would have last year, I think the Liberty, Georgia first round game, and you know what that is? That's a mid-September non-conference game at Sanford Stadium. And so I have one industry insider tell me that this started out at like $100 million for 4 games, those first round games, what they're worth. He said we might pay $5 million for some of these. And that's really what's going on. To my knowledge, those first round games were 24 and 25, those 4 games that start this year, December 19th. I don't think they've been sold yet. So we don't even have that. So how can you discuss revenue distributions? How can you discuss a lot of this stuff when you don't even have that figured out yet?
I always like to look at what Bob Thompson says on these TV deals, and his immediate response was, "That sure does seem to be low," and you're exactly right. Is it too late then for them to go, "Damn, we need to cut this back to 8," or they're going to 12? There's no question about it, right?
No, they're going to 12. Now look, I think everything's on the table in 26 after this current contract runs out, and I mean everything from structure to access to everything. Again, great thank yous on the board is saying, we'll do the 12 best. Why wouldn't you? When you're going to have half the field from the Big Ten and half from the SEC. In fact, we have numbers that we researched in the 10 years of the CFP. If you took the current alignment going forward, the average number of combined teams in the 12-team playoff would have been 7.6 on average in the Big Ten and SEC. So that gives you an idea. It would have been 9 last year. So that gives you an idea of what they're going after.
Dennis, you mentioned Florida State earlier and their plot to leave the ACC. The ACC had a very interesting little nugget in their latest legal filing in that apparently Florida State can just buy their way out of the deal, which if that was the case, they could have saved themselves a lot of trouble and consternation and just maybe sent an email to them and said, "Hey, here's the number. Let's start working." I'm wondering why that came out right now.
Great reporting by Matt Baker of the Tampa Times. That's basically why. And who's to say they aren't way down the road in negotiating it? Now, look, their number, Florida State's number in their legal filing in the lawsuit is $572 million total to buy out. I don't think Florida State or anybody has $572 million laying around to buy out of a conference. So it would have to be a very, very complicated negotiations. And then not only that, then that gives the likes of North Carolina, Clemson, Miami, maybe Virginia a roadmap as to how they get out. And then there's the situation of who wants them and how soon and what they can earn. But you already see the wheels turning here, Smokey, about there being some sort of separation. When the SEC and Big Ten a couple of weeks ago came out with that advisory group, I don't know if you saw what I wrote, but I said it's very thinly veiled. It's like, if you don't like what we propose, we can have our own playoff. And that's true. Greg Sankey has said that again. If everything else fails, the SEC alone could have its own playoff, and it would earn untold millions of dollars. So that was a velvet hammer telling everybody else, including Charlie Baker, get out of the way. Here's what we're going to try to do. And I'm not saying the NCAA is going away. I'm just saying guys like Sankey and now Petiti at the Big Ten, who's had a few months on the job, are sick of, for example, the NCAA Board of Governors, that 9-person body, having anybody from the group of 5 on it. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. This is the group that runs the NCAA. Well, this whole discussion we're having is about those 68 schools, and within that, the 34 in the SEC and the Big Ten. So it's going to be interesting.
I've seen quotes from Petiti and Sankey, but they also said they did not want to so much. I don't know if the word was disrupt the ecosystem. Do you believe them?
I think they said what they had to say. Like I said, I think it was a velvet hammer.
Yeah.
We're going to form an advisory group. Well, why did that advisory group not include the ACC and Big 12? I think they've answered that. I thought I read that they've answered that. Like, well, we thought we could be more streamlined and do, if it is a Power 4 at all, that answers the question. That ends the argument. It's a Super 2 at the top.
All right, so you're talking about tomorrow they meet the presidents, Wednesday the commissioners. And they start playing football at the end of August, I believe, with Florida State and whoever else in Dublin.
Mm-hmm.
How in the world did they get to this point? Was it because everything became shrapnel from the conference realignment and the Pac-12 is down to 2?
That's part of it. I think they're just settling into that. There's nobody knows what that other conference, that Pac-2, is going to look like. Don't forget that we didn't settle on 12 for 24 until September. Do you remember that when Mark Keenum, the president of Mississippi State, had to intervene because of infighting in the league? And if you want to, it sounds old, but if you want to talk about lack of leadership, that's what it is. I mean, everybody's out for their own, for what they can get. You see that from the right seat, from all these conferences, from the stakeholders in TV. And now the players are more than empowered. We're going to see collective bargaining. So that has to be figured out. I'm sure in some point their accountants or commissioners or presidents are sitting there, no matter what they get from ESPN or whoever ends up having these games, how much of this are we going to have to carve out to the players? Because I think that's going to be part of it. If the schools don't do it, the playoff will. They'll collectively bargain with the players. In exchange for this, you will play in all these postseason games that another person felt over the weekend. Absolutely, there's going to be opt-outs in the playoffs. I'd already written that too. And they're going to demand things. If you collectively bargain that participation, then, for example, Bryce Young doesn't sit out. Because I've already said this, what's in it for Bryce Young if you're his handlers, if you're his parents, and this is theoretical, obviously, to play in 4 more football games when you can weigh a rookie salary and get to your second salary, which is where the big money is, versus a broken ankle. Because that's going to happen. There are going to be guys sitting out.
Dennis, could you see a scenario where Brett Yormark, for the benefit of the Big 12, just kind of politically and where they sit right now, says, let's bring on the Pac-2. Let's give them that home that they're looking for. That settles that, and now Kirk Schultz will give everybody his vote, and we can all move forward. Do you see any part of the Big 12 where they'd be keen to do that? Or
no.
Okay.
Right. Look, never say never. But
sure, right.
In all this, but there's no value there. I mean, there's a reason why they've been cut out of the herd. They don't bring value to another conference. they are more a Mountain West type school. There's a reason why they weren't the only two brought along to the Big 12 or Big 10. You can see the markets they play in. There's no brand value recognition to speak of. All that being said is I think they're owed something. I mean, and that's what they're holding out for. You owe us something for being eliminated from the herd. We've done nothing wrong except, compete at a high level, pay our bills. Look where Oregon State had come from in football to win 10 games last year, or in 2022, I believe, in Washington State. So I think they deserve something, but I don't know, short of this vote that they're holding over everybody's heads to try to get more money, to get as close to that $33 million, which I think is their distribution in the final year of the Pac-12 this year, to get as close to that standard of living as possible, because if not, then they're talking about huge budget cuts and not even mentioning what all these schools are going to have to participate in if there's one of these negative judgments and one of these monster antitrust suits. And as I wrote, about 10 days ago, now we can see the finish line. Mm-hmm. The House lawsuit is going to be heard next January. We've got Dartmouth players that are going to be unionizing. There may be other schools doing that. There's about 5 major lawsuits, all of them that exposes the NCAA and whatever the Power 5 is to judgment.
Dennis, do you think that all of us in the college football media, like maybe 2 more years, we could sit down for a bar exam and some of us might pass it? I wouldn't. But I would. I've thought about that. Like if I was speaking to a college class that wanted to get into sports writing, I would say absolutely take law classes, get a business minor. Because to cover all this stuff, you just have to re-educate yourself. When all this stuff started to bubble up years ago, I didn't have the knowledge. I had to call people and read and get used to it. But yeah, I would definitely have at least in the term. You're absolutely right.
You look at everything that's happened in the last. Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, with us. The last 3 or 4 years, from the transfer portal, the NIL, to the extra year where we now see a player at Miami in his, 9th year, whatever it might be. I saw the Michigan quarterback getting a 7th year, the college football playoff. All of this that seemed like it tried to fit in one barrel at one time, is this just like the implosion of what so much at one time was trying to be done?
Yeah, I think eventually it was going to happen, because the liability to something you first have to answer or address if you're going to have a breakaway. The NCAA, not many people know this, the NCAA spends $65 million a year on FBS football in a sport where they don't sponsor a championship, right? Mm-hmm. The CFP is an LLC. I've already written a story that on average, $10 million out of that $65 million is paying off legal liability in some of these cases, head trauma, what have you. And so the NCAA foots that bill. If those two leagues are going to break away, there is some sort of breakaway. Somebody has to hold on to that liability. That's why I think it stays together. I don't think Greg Sankey in his heart of hearts wants to do it. He might be forced to have to do it. But somebody's going to have to take that on, unless and until you collectively bargain. That's why people go crazy over that. It doesn't even have to be money. If you give us 2 years, which a lot of coaches would kill for right now. Stay on campus for 2 years. We will provide you with, let's just say lifetime medical. You don't have to pay for a knee replacement when you're 50. In exchange for that, you have to say you're not going to sue us for that stuff as a body. And that's we're seeing this in the very small beginnings at Dartmouth. So if they get that thing done, they're going to be able to negotiate practice time, conditions when they travel, when they leave, how much they're going to be paid. And that's why all this is coming. I think within a year we're going to have some resolution on what I'm talking about, the collective bargaining.
It's a carousel, both college, the players, now the coaches. Baylor lost an offensive line coach today. Arizona has a new AD. Have you heard much about Desiree Reed-Francois at Missouri?
Yeah, know her well. Definitely a step down. She's leaving an SEC job for a Big 12 job at Arizona, where they're absolutely upside down financially, maybe as much as 9 figures, because of, I don't know, mismanagement of money on both the university and athletic side. They were hit by COVID, whatnot. She has her law degree from Arizona, but I would dare say she's probably taking a pay cut. So something went sideways at Missouri. She's very well respected, one of only 4 or 5 women in major college athletics who's an AD, but it's not her going to Ohio State. It's going to Arizona, which just transitioned from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, and in a lot of people's eyes, that's not a step up.
Dennis, great stuff as always. It'll be an interesting week. Tomorrow, the presidents. Wednesday, the commissioners. And who knows if anything is about to get done. Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, a great follow as well on his Twitter feed with us when there are so many things going on. It's just a melting pot of everything that don't seem to have they don't seem to have like an end in sight. Mm-hmm. Or like these are the specific rules you have to follow. Like I look at a speed limit sign and I think, okay, that's a suggested speed limit. I know that means you can't do 75 and above. You could get a ticket, or even worse. So great 20 minutes or so with Dennis Dodd from CBS Sports.
Well, I think there is an end, guys. There has to be. There has to be an end. They don't have a playoff past the next 2 years, so they have to get something done here sooner rather than later. Washington State, Oregon State have to know what they're allowed to do in the next 2 years or what their options are. So there's decisions coming that aren't necessarily having to be made tomorrow, but there's decisions that lead to more decisions that lead ultimately those decisions that do have to be made within the next couple of years. Playoff format, what conference you're in, revenue sharing, all of these different topics. I know it seems like they just drag on and they're never ending with no resolutions because the NCAA created that entire environment itself and has no one to blame but itself, really. But at the same time, there is a ticking clock, and it's in these next 2 years. I think there's this window, and then on the other side of 2025 is when we'll see whatever it is that college football becomes, and to a lesser extent college sports. But yeah, I mean, there has to be a ticking clock because you've got 2 years of playoffs remaining, and that's it. You've got 2 years of having the freedom to be a 2-team conference, and that's it. And so, yeah, I mean, at least on those 2 subjects, and we know with the revenue sharing and all of that, I mean, that's all entwined, ingrained in the bigger problems and a part of those as well. So ultimately, when you're talking about the SEC and the Big Ten and what they decide to do or whatever, I mean, that's going to have to do with revenue sharing. That's going to have to do with whatever you do next with players as employees or whatever your move is. So, yeah, I think these next 2 years are when all of the I guess thunder and lightning and storms are all going to come together and kind of like they are right now, but start to get resolved because there has to be a point where you get those resolved. And they've been dragging their feet on some of them. There's not time to do that really with these things anymore. You can feel it. You can feel it. We talk about it every day, this break. I mean, some of that's media fed for sure, kind of like the ESPN TV deal. And again, people have their reasons as to why that was put out there the way that it was, or various other reports are put out there sometimes the way that they are. But when you keep hearing that theme over and over and over again, I mean, basically there's ultimatums being given. Like, do what we want, or we're going to pick up our ball and go do what we want and do it by ourselves and take a lot of the money with us. So, yeah, this little window of time, this is going to be when, and there was already plenty of change these last couple of years, but these next 2 are where we're going to figure out what this all is going to look like moving forward.
By the way, it's also a pretty good day for Arizona. We mentioned the AD, and you heard Dennis and her thoughts about her. Jason Scheer, among others, that Tommy Lloyd, the head coach, the basketball coach who was at Gonzaga, Arizona, just signed a 5-year agreement, total compensation of about $5.25 million a year, up to $6 million in year number 5. They are ranked a future Big 12 team inside the top 10 most of the year.
Why did I pick sports reporting instead of sports coaching as my discipline? Just every time I hear one of these contracts that, like, even if I wasn't even that good as Tommy Lloyd, like, I'd still be making.
You get a buyout.
Crap loads of money.
Suck, go 2-10, get a
I
buyout.
know.
Right?
Like, you know what? I would love for someone to hire me, and then I could half-ass it through the whole first year, and then be just on Easy Street for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
If I wanted to make easy money, I should have been a politician. That's what I should have done.
Kim Coulter, super chat. Thank you. A big one, too. Thank you, Kim. When Kim goes out to the super chat, he does something with it. Paul, you know I've said for months FSU could put together their exit money, no problem. I'll be interested to see what they come up with. Our next guest, Bill Farley from Substack, has written a lot of really good stuff on the FSU future and the ACC and whatever, and that'll be interesting. A great timing, Kim, to get into our guest, Bill Farley.
Yeah, and this is he's like speaking a different language to me with what I was reading, because it's so interesting. And
were you talking about Farley?
Yeah, but it's just like it's kind of above my pay grade, just how I am. But I do want to make one comment though on the Florida State thing, guys. I don't think it was ever unknown that they could pay a buyout.
Never.
That was always known.
Always known.
Yeah, but like it's being treated again, and I don't know what's going on with media right now, but it's being treated as like this brand new information. And I think it's always been common knowledge that you could pay the buyout. We talked about that with Oklahoma and Texas forever. You could pay the buyout, but are you going to cut $100 million check even if you're?
Oh, it's more than that.
Well, I know. I'm just throwing a figure out there, but. Are you going to be willing to do that? Nope, probably not. Not even schools the size of Texas were wanting to pay that full amount just to go ahead and move on. So, yeah, that buyout part has always been, I feel like, common knowledge and not like some bombshell that was dropped. But I guess that
I think the information was the thought was always that they would own their TV rights. The way that they said it was they can buy back their TV rights. So in the filing, it wasn't that they had to pay the exit fee. That's what we all knew.
Right.
But the ACC said they could buy back their TV rights.
It's nearly $600 million overall, everything.
So that's where it was kind of surprising in that, like, the grant of rights thing has always been thought, like, sure, you can pay the buyout,
but you still own
your TV rights.
Right.
Well, that's not apparently the case in that the ACC saying they can buy back their TV rights, which I think that's the difference. That's the difference there in that, there was always going to be a buyout, but then how do you get out of the grant of rights? Because the grant of rights and the buyout are two different things.
The buyout is approximately $120 million. Mm-hmm. The grant of rights is the big mother load. In fact, Bill Farley from Substack has written a lot about this, and as Craig said, above probably my pay grade too, but he was going into some really good stuff from how can they do this, who would they deal with, all of that. Looking forward to hearing from Bill Farley, Substack on FSU, the ACC, and more. And this is 365 Sports. Petty Clinic, lowt.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. Here's how he can help you out. As you get older, if you're in your 20s, probably not. Even if you're in your 30s, probably not. When you get into 35 or 40, your testosterone level can drop just because of father time. Not everybody. 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. It may be that is you, and if you're fortunate, it is not. Like some have hereditary high blood pressure, cholesterol, things like that can be a part of the life. But testosterone, it just happens. 1 out of every 3.5 or 4 men have low testosterone. Dr. Petty will set you up. You contact him by going to the website. Dr. Petty and his staff will set you up to go and get your blood work. The blood work results will go to them. Dr. Petty will analyze it, look at it, get the details of it, and if your testosterone level is too low, he can put you in a program to increase your testosterone level so you can become the high-performance man you want to be. It's not just your sex drive or ED. That gets all the attention. It could be you just don't feel right. You're lethargic. You're not sleeping well. It just is kind of something's changing. Besides, you're getting older. Dr. Kent Petty can help you out at Petty Clinic, lowt.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets, sirloin steaks, bone-in ribeyes, boneless ribeyes, and even prime rib. Cut specifically the way you want, the thickness that you want. They're all delicious. They have Norwegian salmon, mahi-mahi, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey, variety of cheese, and several options of sausage links, and even regular jalapeno or cheese snack sticks, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, and ground beef, marinated beef or chicken fajitas, and always large briskets and tri-tip available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and tradition continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, a full-service butcher shop and bakery, open Monday through Saturday. The Bauer family, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
403 Sikkim 365 app. If you haven't downloaded that, that works. And of course, 365 Sports on YouTube. So all this that we've covered, college athletics forever. And then, of course, all the disruption of realignment and conferences, and then FSU and the ACC, et cetera. And there's a lot of things that have been written. Bill Farley is someone that he got my attention, and I've contacted him and say, hey, can you come on? And he has written quite a bit about Florida State, what they can do, what they might do, et cetera, what they do. And so he joins us now on 365 Sports. And Bill, I got to be honest with you up front. A lot of what you write is kind of like can confuse me and others, but that's why I wanted to have you on the show. First of all, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Why did this story become the one? Is this because this could be the end of conference realignment as we know it, or that you've jumped into this one?
Well, I said, first of all, it's in my professional interest. My professional career, I worked on real estate joint ventures, economic development, 10 years in the public sector, and then 20 plus years in the private sector. And my last job in the public sector was negotiating a deal to keep the NBA Kings in Sacramento. And then my first jobs in the private sector, one was using private equity for a university project, and then also negotiating naming rights and the financing structure for a minor league baseball team. So this was in my wheelhouse as this topic came up. I'm an Oregon State grad. So back around August, I was working on another research project regarding a university expansion and their relationships with the community. So in August, all this stuff starts to hit the fan with realignment, and Oregon State obviously is left out. So I turned to that and I started looking at all the documents and making requests, and that kind of started my interest. And I'm still collecting documents on that. So that's what kind of piqued my interest. And as I wrote about this, the reaction and the interest in what I was writing was infinitely greater than my writing on the Legislative Reform Act of 1946 or any of the other topics that I occasionally cover. So, engagement helps my research, it helps my writing. So I just found this to be I was getting a lot of feedback as I was working on this topic, and it's in my wheelhouse.
Oh, Bill, you and I sit down with a couple of beers and start talking about the Legislative Reform Act of 1946. We can have a good time.
I'm all in.
But and you may not know this about me. Our viewers do. I'm an FSU grad, so your article really was enlightening to me in that from the aspect of an alumni who's going to have to see this, it just feels like there was this big secret plan, and we'd like to know the details of it, because wherever the team is going to be, that's fine, but it seems pretty complicated. But the way you've laid it out, they have a pretty clear exit strategy and a plan that could work, kind of hinging on how the legality or the legal cases work out, right?
Right. They have. Oh, and I should say, my Uncle Joe is an FSU graduate. He's in his 90s, so he was there when they had leather helmets. So as I looked at this, I knew that there was this project Osceola that came out in Sportico. So I made a quick request. I make these public information requests all the time, and it usually takes 5 or 6 months. So I saw they had made a request. They got these documents. I read their story, and I thought, well, I'll just take a shot at saying, hey, give me what they got. And I got it back in a couple of days. And so I was able to go through and look at everything they were, looking at it from a joint venture structure. And because of my business background, I saw a lot of things that Sportico hadn't done. And I knew there was references to bond financing in those documents. So then I went onto the public website and I started seeing all these documents about bond financing. And taking that all together, taking the private equity piece, taking the bond financing that they've got, it's in the public domain. And you really have a pretty comprehensive strategic plan. It hasn't been revealed that way, but they're covering all their bases. They've got everything lined up. And if they negotiate a very small exit fee, they are really positioned well with a lot of resources they've identified and strategies to really promote their athletic department in whatever conference they end up in.
Bill, when we first started hearing about the private equity side of things, it was very much a live golf kind of headline, like they're going to go grab the Saudis and the Saudis are going to run college football. Is there a simpler way for people like myself who don't know the ins and outs of the private equity side of things and why it's not that's being referred to? Is there a way you could kind of break down how private equity is intertwined in this story and why it's important, particularly to Florida State here?
Yeah. So I saw one internal email where this, the staff are saying, hey, kind of on the private equity side, there's a lot of guardrails in the public sector where you can't just take in a bunch of Saudi money and start, doing all these sorts of projects. It really will be very narrow. And I'll just give you a very simple example. And this is in their documents, and they actually have in the merchandising and the marketing side. It looks like they're going to take in a partner, and let's say their marketing business today is worth $1 million. It could be any number. Let's say it's worth $1 million. And a private marketing company comes in and say, okay, we'll buy 10% interest in this. We'll form a joint venture. We now own 10%. We're giving you $100,000. It's like Shark Tank. How these people come on and say, I want $100,000 for 10% of my business, and they want those sharks to help them scale it up. So, the private venture partner is in for 10%. You've got this $1 million business. It's generating $100,000 a year currently. Then when the private partner adds their expertise to it, and they're getting paid for that. They're getting paid. There's a line item in the budget that they'll be getting $500,000 a year to manage this marketing piece. Their job is to start increasing that $100,000 a year revenue to say $200,000. Now, when it goes to $200,000, it'll be split 90-10, just as each has their own partnership interest. But when let's say they might say, well, if it goes over 200,000, that's more than we ever thought. So we're going to give the private partner, we're going to split it 50-50 after that. And that's called a kind of a waterfall where the first spurt in growth is split based on your ownership interest. And then the next level up, it starts to go towards the private equity partner that has the management expertise that's been lifting the revenue. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. What is the risk of the private equity, the person who's trying to help them raise this money?
Their only downside is if they don't lift the revenue, and they're getting a fee to manage it. If it stays constant, the money that they probably placed somebody else's money, that $100,000, and they told them, hey, you're going to be investing in a merchandising or marketing company, and we're going to get you a 20% return. If they don't get that, they're going to lose customers because their job is to lift companies' revenue and get a split of the profits. And I see three business lines, separate, distinct business lines where they'd have three different equity partners, because every equity partner generally has their own expertise. They have one medical office building equity partner that they announced a couple weeks ago that's going to do their $116 million football operation building. That joint venture could come in all sorts of permutations, but I won't go into that. And then the third one is they have a hotel development planned for next to their basketball arena. That could be a hotel equity partner that develops the hotel and agrees on splits and revenues. So it won't be just the Saudis, or a Saudi type, one giant group. It'll be strategic, and they'll have different partners that have expertise in different business lines.
So, I mean, that to me was the thing that kind of worried me, that sometimes when you turn yourself over to the big money, you don't have control of you anymore. They'll take out the parts of it that maybe people liked. I used talking to Smokey before the show. Like, Whataburger was always a Texas company, and then it got sold to this big conglomerate, and it feels like there's something that's like 5% different about it right now. It's the same, but it's different. How do they guard against that? And then also, how are the laws written that private equity can invest in a company or a school that is owned and run by a state school?
Well, in the case, let's take the football operations facility. I'll take your last question because I definitely know that one. What they can do is they can lease the ground to the private equity partner. The private equity partner, so they'll be getting a ground lease payment every year. The private equity partner can build the building and then lease back a portion of that building to the university. And then in the rest of the building, they could, a lot of private equity companies are coming onto university campuses to kind of tie into research. They're called innovation districts. They're popping up everywhere. But what they do is they'll bring in tenants, sometimes new businesses, and they'll structure a rent deal with these new tenants that are kind of hooked in with the medical research of the university, and say, we'll give you a low rent, we want a share of your company. So they'll basically have like an incubator or partnerships with a lot of small companies within their building, and then that's how they make extra money. But for the university, they're protected because they own the ground. The building is, say it's a 50-year lease for the building, for the ground lease. They'll eventually get that building back. And there's really, they've got all sorts of protections. They're going to have a long-term lease for their part of the building that they're using, and they're going to be pulling in cash from the private equity, and they don't subordinate, or they don't put, when the private equity company gets a loan for the building, they can't put the ground as part of the collateral. So the university is protected.
Bill, what's the difference between what you're explaining and what LIV is doing with the PIF?
So I haven't looked at that structure. That's the golf tour we're talking about, right?
Yes, sir.
So that to me is they're the ownership. They're I believe a complete owner, but I'm not really familiar how they're structured, and these things can be structured so many ways. The hotel joint venture could be completely different than the football operations facility and completely different than the merchandising. In all cases, it's private money taking in ownership, the public sector protecting and making sure they don't lose their land or their access to what they need for that building. And then hopefully they're getting a lift in their revenues based on that private equity partner's expertise.
So when you hear,
I think the live example would almost be like if you just turned the whole thing, just said we're going to license the whole athletic department out to somebody, and you guys, can lease our football stadium, you can lease our arena, you will hire all the athletes, you'll do all this. I think that would be like so far on the other side of the spectrum from what universities are typically involved in. I don't see the Florida State breaking ground with anything that hasn't been done already on university campuses.
All right, so the buyout appears to be like $120 million. If you look at the exit or the grant of rights, you see numbers that are $572 million, and of course that can be negotiated. What are your thoughts that the ACC would negotiate, like let's say even halfway to Florida State where they are right now? Is that even a possibility? Because if they do, their conference might just break apart.
Yeah, I think when Florida State, enters, kind of goes on the offense and files a lawsuit, it's a one-on-one negotiation between them and the ACC at start. But very quickly it becomes a three-way negotiation because ESPN is going to start saying, hey, now let me look at this. Do I want to pull the trigger on and just tell the ACC that I'm not going to be extending that grant of rights past 2027? I think is the first stop they have. Now you've got a three-way negotiation. So my expectation is that ESPN, just like they played a role with the helping the Big 12 pull in 4 teams from the Pac-12, I think they're going to be a party to this negotiation, and it's going to drive the exit cost way down. My expectation is it's going to come way down to where it's comfortable for Florida State to get out. Whether it helps the other schools get out, I'm not sure. That Florida State is to me, as I look at their financial situation, there can't be many other schools in the ACC that can match their financial strength. So, if they set it at $200 million, Florida State gets out, can everybody else foot that bill? When they turn over the cushions in their sofa, they might not be finding gold bars. They might be finding loose change. So we'll see.
Bill, to that end, when it comes into the three-way negotiation, do you think that these court cases will ever actually see the inside of a courtroom, or is this just the first part of what will inevitably be a negotiation? Because I don't think all parties involved here really want everything out in the open.
No, sadly for me, because I want to see all those documents. Because part of what I've done in other research projects is I make these public records requests so I can get everything and see what were these folks lying about, what were they misrepresenting, where were they telling the truth. I'm trying to help a community or fans in this case understand how these narratives, how accurate they were. So unfortunately, I think for me, but good for Florida State, it's going to be settled because nobody wants discovery. We've seen snippets of stuff from the Pac-12, and it is horrible public relations for those university presidents who are all thinking, they're all rational actors. They're all thinking about their own careers. Commissioners are thinking about their careers. Nobody wants that type of exposure, those emails coming out.
Speaking of the Pac-12, the Pac-2 with Oregon State, Washington State, which is close to your heart, what are your overall thoughts of what's happened and what will happen with those two?
Well, I was asked that question the other day on a program where I just talked about Oregon State, and I was kind of stumped, even though I'm immersed in this and I think about it all the time. But you have to think about employment. You have to think about what's the future of employment wages for football players. What's the future of NIL? What's the future of this Super League that's going to take a lot of the resources away from the media companies or redirect it to concentrate at the top? When I see all of that, I think Oregon State, Washington State will be part of a West Coast football league. Probably predominantly the Mountain West, which is good football. I've gone to a lot of Fresno State, Reno, Las Vegas. There's a lot of good football, and there will always be good football because the there's only so many 4 and 5 stars, and there's plenty of 3 stars to fill rosters. So I think Oregon State will have good football. I don't see them joining to a fractured ACC. I think they're going to be forming a good, solid West Coast program.
Yeah, it's a mess. How much of your day is spent right now trying to break the code for Florida State and the ACC?
Well, I got through the documents. I think I've picked through everything that I could. I think it's real. I see their financial plan and their resources are pretty much set. They've got a plan to raise some revenue in their ticketing, to bring in concerts. They've got a plan to add revenue to their operations. They've got great borrowing capacity. They've been borrowing at 3% and 4% for the university system there for parking garages and student housing. So they're going to get great interest rates. They're going to have a lot of borrowing capacity. So I think they've got the money. So I'm starting to get past that. I don't see much more I can add. What I'm thinking about next, looking at while I wait for other documents, is kind of a future index to say, given all these factors that are facing all of college football teams, NIL, employee wages, media contracts, it's going to look, I think, a lot like professional sports in terms of relationships with communities needing to pitch in for renovations, states needing to pitch in. And I'm starting to think, well, what states, what football schools are going to have all the dynamic, all the pieces where they can compete at the highest levels? Because I think about an Arkansas and a Mississippi and some of the schools that are in big conferences now, but maybe are not in resource-rich communities. How are they going to survive? How is their fan base going to support them when they're kind of perpetually 3-10 or so, or 3-9 in these super leagues? So I think I've been thinking, and this also started with the Pac-12 gave us a stratification from top to bottom. Here are your top schools and here are your bottom schools. Mm-hmm. And it kind of neatly slotted them into dollar values. And now you add on, well, can Arizona, can they afford NIL? Can they afford employee salaries? They're broke, so maybe they drop down a couple more rungs and they're going to have a difficult time in the future. So that's what I'm thinking about now, is how do you kind of construct a futures index for football teams, given all these dynamics that are facing us.
My last question for you: if the momentum eventually is obvious for Florida State, how soon will North Carolina, Clemson, and others file their get the hell out of there? Will it be like even before the ink is dry?
I would think if they've got a wink and a nod, like Oregon and Washington, had a wink and a nod from the Big Ten. And I know everybody, even Oregon State, was talking to the ACC and the Big 12. Everybody was talking before the final bust. So those teams are talking, and if they've got the opening, they file immediately and they get out, because I think those schools probably have the staying power to compete at the top level, and the other ones, really just have to think about whether they want to invest that much money. And again, every university is different. Arizona needs football to drive application. Oregon needs football to drive applications. UCLA does not need football to drive applications. Every university's got their own kind of combination of what they get out of football and what they can put into football. So the ones you mentioned seem to be ones that would be good to go up. And everybody else, you have to look at them individually.
Bill, I'm glad I reached out to you, man. You're doing a hell of a job for a lot of people. I just mentioned it. I'm going to put it on my Twitter feed that they have not read you or have not subscribed to what you do. They need to. We appreciate it. I'm so glad we're able to get you on the show to help make sense of otherwise a pretty complicated situation.
Okay, I hope I didn't add any confusion.
Oh, no.
No.
Quite the opposite.
It helped quite a bit. Thank you. Bill Farley, Substack at Bill Farley, PhD. His background of how he got into this and all that, and I'm really glad we got him on. Good stuff.
I'd sign up for a class he taught. That's for sure. I was very intrigued by all of that, and hopefully it fills in some of the gaps. It did for me reading it because, what have I said from the beginning? Like, all right, I mean, hope you guys have a real plan. This isn't bravado, and it does look like they have somewhat of that. And again, we'll see how this shakes out. But I didn't consider the factor at all of ESPN getting involved once this gets to that phase of where, again, like you said, nobody wants all these details coming out, and because there are things that while a company like ESPN and Disney would be able to just, run right through it, it's going to make them look bad. While the ACC, who's already like in a weak position when you've got one of your bigger schools wanting to leave and get out, and then they're going to bring up stuff from years ago that you probably looking back on wish hadn't happened. Like, it's all just not going to make you look good and look strong. So the best thing to go forward is to negotiate your way out of it. But I'm like him. I just want to see all the documents. I want to see all these things.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's probably a smoking gun or two there maybe when it comes to ESPN and just the negotiation that they wouldn't want out there if it's a deal that's not as great as it was cracked up to be, right? And that the kind of the big smoking gun people assume is out there is the role ESPN played to get the most favorable deal. And
I would think the two things that, and this is on either, and I don't know about Florida State, so I'm sure they've got some dumb stuff in there too, especially given who the previous leadership was. But I do think that the ACC doesn't want John Swofford stuff coming out because this relationship, his son and Raycom, and how he kind of didn't really involve anybody else in that part of it. And then ESPN probably doesn't want any of their deal making tactics to come out because I'm sure they're not just calling up people going, "Hey, we're going to give you exactly what you want and a puppy."
Yeah,
that's not how it works.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think that they'd want that out there. No, but it sounds pretty simple to me. I mean, you and your pals need to go raise some money. Go get about $1 billion and go buy yourselves out. That seems like the simplest path. But no, I mean, I guess there's no telling right now what that price tag looks like. Is the part that we don't know, and of course you're going to try to negotiate that down, whatever that number is, and even then it might still not be feasible. But clearly, between all the on-campus projects and kind of how he got into the weeds on that, and you can read more in his piece if it's still out there. I know it is on the website, but just as far as availability goes, but it was fascinating stuff. I mean, it got into the weeds in a good way on capital projects and those types of things and how they play into the bigger picture and how Florida State could be setting itself up to make that move when the time comes. So, yeah, I guess the only thing we can all pretty much agree on is that they're not going to be in the ACC, barring that contract just being so ironclad or, them not being able to come up with the money. But beyond that, I mean, there is no reason to believe really that the Florida State Seminoles will be in the ACC beyond the next couple of years. That feels like it's just something's going to have to break there. But how that happens, that's what we're talking about, and I think all very eager to learn and all eager to get to that point, honestly, as well. I think most of us would probably love to fast forward through all of the back and forth and the negotiating and the whatever that looks like and just get to, okay, where's Florida State playing football? SEC, okay, cool. And then, Big Ten, okay, cool. Who's coming with them? North Carolina, great. Okay, now let's move on and see what that looks like because there's so many other teams that are just hinging on this result. And conferences even to an extent that, it would be nice to know, but we still got a bit of a feeling out process and a working out process ahead of us. But for how long, who knows? But, he does a great job of shedding some light on what is kind of a complicated topic.
All right, when we come back, he covers the University of Houston men's basketball team for the Houston Roundball Review. Chris Gardner on tonight's mega game between number 2 and number 6. Houston hosting Iowa State at the Fertitta Center. All of that and more. And this is 365 Sports.
Cars priced right both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
You want to know
know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
That coaching carousel in college football I mentioned may have just affected Iowa State. We'll have that for you here momentarily. Not Matt Campbell, but part of his staff at a pretty high level. We're now joined by Chris Gardner. Houston Round Ball Review, number 2 against number 6 tonight at the Fertitta Center. Houston buried Texas right off the tip, as Paul mentioned earlier, and a showdown tonight. Chris, thank you very much for your time. How would you describe watching Houston play basketball?
Well, first, guys, thank you very much for having me on the show.
You're welcome.
Oh, Cougs, I won't go as far as to say it's UFC or like some of the Longhorn writers are trying to say on Saturday's game, but it's physical, very physical, and it's old school basketball like in late 80s, 90s NBA kind of stuff. And I love it.
Chris, look, nobody would have been surprised that Houston beaten Texas. I mean, that's not a surprise. They're beating most everybody that they play. But when they came in and dominated Texas like that, was that a statement to not only the rest of the Big 12, but the rest of the country that, like, look, good teams are going to come in here and we're going to shred them?
Well, it's a good thing I don't gamble because one of my good friends told me, yeah, I think the Cougs win by 15. I was like, no, it's going to be closer than that. So I was very wrong. But when the game was tied at 17, it was like Houston's offense just hit another gear. The defense remained constant. And next thing you know, it's 55-31, Houston over Texas.
Chris, we're here in Waco, obviously. We got to see LJ Cryer do his thing for Scott Drew and company and then made the decision, obviously, to go to Houston this offseason. How would you describe his year thus far and just his role and how things have played out with him and the Cougs?
It's taken LJ a while to adjust to the defensive mindset and the physicality that the Cougars play. His offense some fans are probably expecting him to light it up every game from three. He hasn't. But defensively, he's bought into the system. That was first things first. Coach Sampson has said that it takes newcomers a while to buy into the system, but it's non-negotiable. You're going to play hard and physical the way we want you to play. And if you don't want to do that, then you really shouldn't be here. So LJ bought into it. Took a little bit to get used to the physicality that they play, but him and Jamal Shade have been friends since I think they were 10 years old. So that chemistry you can see on the court as well.
So they are in a great run, but Iowa State is too. Iowa State can play physical. They can beat you up a little bit too. Is this going to be? I hope they let them play to a point where it's not like Pistons against whoever back in the 80s like we saw. But could this be one of those games that becomes a free throw shooting contest rather than the beauty of basketball?
I hope not, Smokey. I hope that the refs let them play, and it's both teams are physical. We're talking about two of the best defenses in all of college basketball. I hope the refs don't. We're tuning in to watch the game. Fans are going to be there to see two teams play, not see the refs blow their whistle. So hopefully that will allow the guys to be physical, not dirty, but be physical, and then rebounding will be a key, obviously. And we'll see if it comes down to making free throws. And everyone who follows Houston Cougar basketball knows it's like traditional for the Cougars to struggle at the line. That goes back 50, 60 years.
Chris, what surprises you most about the transition to the Big 12? I knew I thought there would be more losses, obviously because they're playing a tougher conference schedule. So far, that hasn't really manifested itself all that much. But they were clearly ready, but I don't know if anybody thought that they were this ready to come in and run the league like they have so far.
Honestly, Paul, I kind of had them losing like 5 or 6 times in Big 12 play because it is, in my opinion, and a lot of folks, some folks will say SEC, but the Big 12 is the best conference in men's basketball. Coach Sampson has the players. He recruited for the conference 2-3 years ago. So it's not a surprise to the guys to be physical and to adjust to Big 12 play. And he had high expectations for freshman big man Jojo Tugler. Mm-hmm. And you could see his potential. He still struggles with foul trouble every once in a while. A lot of freshmen do, but you can see his potential. And for the most part, the team is pretty veteran laden in experience, so it doesn't have to rely on younger players. And for the Big 12 play, you need experienced people, especially in the backcourt.
Yeah, no, and I was there at the Final Four when Baylor won it all, and Baylor, they were just too much for Houston. Did that allow Kelvin to not retool because, he's been doing that anyway, but did that kind of give the players an idea, sense of what they needed? Because Baylor, they were old, they were experienced, their guards were phenomenal, they had Vital that would knock people around. Did that give them kind of a blueprint too? Yes, and Coach Sampson has said many times that Baylor team, that championship team for the Bears was the best team he's seen in his 10 years at Houston. And the matchup, the backcourt was a huge difference in that Final Four. It was a rout. Flew to the Bears for the job they did and win the championship. But I think that was a good gauge for Coach Sampson and staff. This is where we need to get. This is the kind of players we need to get to bring into the program to compete and for a national championship, yes. They stubbed their toe a couple of times early, and they didn't blink. How much of a challenge was that early in the Big 12? It was a challenge for the fans to adjust to it because, the fans are like, oh, my gosh, we lost Iowa State. We lost at TCU. The sky is falling. Oh, no. But Coach Sampson, he takes everything. He's full of cliches, but he tells the players one game at a time, we'll be okay. It's a life in the Big 12, life on the road. It's hard to win on the road. We'll be okay. So fan-wise, they had to adjust to that. But the players, they trust Coach Sampson. They trust that he knows what he's doing. And he's been in the conference before, previously, as you guys know. And his goal every season is for the team to get better month to month, November to December, January, et cetera. And they are playing really good ball right now on schedule.
Chris, what I was at the Kansas-Houston game a couple weeks ago, and what stuck out to me that game and listening to Kelvin Sampson afterwards was they lost, and they lost by a considerable margin, but they just ran into Kansas at home in a, where Kansas played almost perfect, and they didn't play poorly. Is there a game this year where you could really mark down that they've played poorly? Because they don't. I'm looking back through, and I can't think of one even in their losses.
Not poorly so much. KU shot so well in that game. They shot 70%. And any team, you're playing an opponent that shoots 70%, you're probably going to lose. The Cougars, that was their first time, most of them playing it at the Fog. Rebounding was that was probably their biggest surprise at how KU handled them on the boards that game. Houston had like 24 rebounds as a team. And Tugler and Juwan Roberts had 21 of those 24 boards. So getting manhandled on the boards was probably the biggest surprise. And the guards didn't rebound at all in that game. And that's one thing Coach Sampson really wants his guards to do. You can't rely on your big man to rebound everything. So since then, you've seen Jamal Shedd, LJ Cryer, Emmanuel Sharp hit the boards more, and that's been a big difference. Plus, Malik Wilson, who played at Texas Tech prior, he's helped out coming off the bench, rebounding.
The quote from Rodney Terry in the postgame, you got to be built for it. If we were going to still stay in this league with these guys, Houston, we'd have to build to having that physicality. You know what I mean? And things of that nature. He mentioned, yes, they're going into the SEC, but it's a different level. Then again, Kelvin, a week or two ago, I thought went to bat for his former AD as Boston, Mac Rhodes, who got fined by the Big 12 because he was mad that the game was getting out of control physically. How much do you feel like he may have had Mac Rhodes' back that night too?
A great deal. And the question, I won't say, but from a colleague of ours who asked it, and Coach Sampson was like, what are your thoughts on getting the technical fouls and everything? And said, well, are you going to help me pay for the fine? Help me pay the $25,000 because I don't want to, pay the $25,000 like Mac was fined to do. So I'm not going to say anything about it, but you saw it. Y'all know how I feel about it. Next. When I heard Coach Cherry say those comments Saturday, I was like, oh my God, did he say that publicly to us here in the room?
Mm-hmm.
Because his players said, Max Asmus and Dylan Disu both said that Houston was a more physical team than we were today. Players, they say that, but when a coach says it, and a Longhorn coach says it, we've seen the response on social media.
Oh, yeah.
He's getting skewered for saying those words, those comments. But, hey, I wish him well in the SEC. It's not much difference in Big 12 and SEC in terms of physicality. I don't think so.
Well, you watch Alabama back when Musselman was good, with the Arkansas struggling right now, but Alabama, they make you wear down. And I watch how Baylor's guards play, and they're pretty good, but they also turn the ball over quite a bit, and how Houston can make it look like there's a swarm of fire ants all over you. That's going to be one. I know it's down the road, not too far, but ought to be interesting to watch. Chris, I'm going to share not the entire text. When I reached out to you earlier today about a segment and how you have watched what we've done and how we've grown and how it's also inspired you. I'm not saying we have, but it's kind of a family, isn't it? What you're doing, what we're doing, and how we have all kind of grown from this?
Indeed. It's part of technology, social media, and we've all had to adjust to covering sports that we've covered for years. So I've watched, 365, and of course, Mac Rhodes was here at Houston, so I've known Mac for a long time as well. Coach Drew, I've known Coach Tang for years when he was here at Heritage Christian for a lot of years before going to Baylor. It's always at K-State. It's always good to see him, and he remembered me, of course, when they were here in Houston when they got waxed by the Cougars. But yeah, it's a small world, and it is a family, and indeed, I enjoy what you guys do and watching the show and the format and everything. So we are trying to do something similar here in H-Town.
All right, Iowa State. We haven't said too much about them other than they play pretty physical too. Your thoughts about what they have done, because they're right there at the top with Houston and beat them earlier this year, as you brought up.
Right. Some of the things they do defensively are similar to the Cougars. The traps on the high screens near the half-court line, that was an issue for the Cougars in the first matchup. Heck, Iowa State jumped to a 14-0 lead and the Cougs had like 6 turnovers in the first 5 minutes of that game. But Coach Sampson said on Sunday to us, those turnovers, Iowa State caused those turnovers. It wasn't just we were careless. They caused those turnovers because of how they play. They're physical as well. There's going to be 2 physical teams competing Monday night. I'm looking forward to it. Tame and Lipsy in the backcourt. Very good point guard. Looking forward to the matchup with he and Shed. The state backcourt against the Cougar backcourt. Should be a lot of fun.
Chris, thank you very much. Good luck with what you're doing, and it will absolutely reach out to you again between now and the tournament and probably during the tournament too. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Guys, take care.
You too. That's Houston Round Ball Review. Chris Gardner's been covering college basketball. Has been a poll, AP poll. I think some of the honors since 1994. So a lot of history there covering basketball. Remember that coaching carousel? Garrett, can you pop this one up? Rams are hiring Iowa State offensive coordinator Nate Schillhouse as their pass game specialist. 33-year-old who played quarterback at Illinois, generated interest from NFL teams in recent years, now making the move to the NFL to work for Sean McVay. Kevin Flaherty, who was a guest on our show, covers mainly college basketball, but said this a minute ago. This is a huge move in Kansas recruiting. Schillhouse evaluated and recruited the state as well as anybody. Kansas high school coaches often mention how much they appreciated and trusted Schillhouse, particularly his willingness to be first on the kids.
Yeah, that would be great. Like the guy who's the best at recruiting that's not even at a school in the state. I'm sure that, Coach Kleiman and Coach Leipold has sent him fruit baskets at his new house in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. Congratulations on your move up. Don't come back.
Yeah, it's a good hire for the Rams. I mean, he's an up-and-coming guy, very bright mind. It's a definite loss for Iowa State, but I don't think anybody's going to disparage him wanting to go take an opportunity like that, especially not knowing how much of a career trajectory he might be on. I mean, maybe the NFL is where he lands ultimately, so to pass up an opportunity coaching with Sean McVay as an offensive guy, I don't think many are probably going to do that, especially sitting in an OC position. So that's a loss for Iowa State, no doubt about it. They're still loaded for bear coming back and feeling like they got a pretty good team next year, but I am now curious to see what Matt Campbell decides to do as far as filling that void. And so, yeah, congrats to Nate Schillhouse. And I saw a write-up in one of the notes about his time when he was at Illinois. I guess you wouldn't have probably been here, but they beat Baylor during his career in the bowl game.
Yeah, I was here. It was my first year.
Okay, yeah. And that's what
beat him up pretty good.
Recall him from, or one of the things that I recall him from. But, yeah, he's a rising coach, great opportunity for him, and we'll see what Iowa State does.
All right, here's why I know it's a tough blow to Iowa State. I can't put up his tweet, but Cyclone Larry.
Not dealing with it well.
One of the greatest follows in history of Twitter. This effing blows, man. He was our future head coach.
Well, he still could be.
And it wasn't, he is not afraid. Cyclone Larry 69 is a great follow. Just if you want to laugh your ass off with pretty much anything, whether they win or lose.
That there were other Cyclone Larrys in there, enough that he had to feel he had to throw the 69 joke in at the end.
Yeah, there is only one Cyclone Larry.
Yeah.
I have gone back and forth with him at times. It's funny as hell. I've invited him on the show. He will not. He's deep inside some tunnel somewhere.
It ruins the magic trick.
Yeah, I know.
It's like seeing the wizard behind the curtain. You don't want to do that.
Like Faux Pellini, right?
Faux Pellini, yeah.
Yeah, do you hear? And like he did some interviews, and it's not the same, right?
He's done.
So I don't think that's the wise move on Larry's part necessarily. Although he's probably done some interviews for all we know. I'm not sure, but yeah, he's an entertaining guy, and that's a loss. And certainly, I'm sure he's being a bit throwing a bit of hyperbole out there because nothing's going to stop him from taking that job in a couple of years if Matt Campbell decides to do something different. But for right now, they've got a pretty good head coach.
Smokey, did you ever watch or know of, I mean, it was in the 90s, your kids were young, Home Improvement?
Yeah.
So you know in Home Improvement, Wilson.
It's Tim Allen?
Yeah. Wilson was always behind the fence, right?
Yes.
And you never saw his full face.
Right.
And I remember reading an article like a couple years ago, like it was the 20th anniversary or whatever, and somebody asked Tim Allen, like, did you ever have an inkling to show Wilson's face, like in the finale, that you would see his full face? And he was like, hell no, we didn't. He's like, the whole joke was that you don't.
Right.
And he's like, so if we did it in the finale, then it's over. Like, we ruined the joke. And so the whole point was that you were never going to see this guy's face. And, you know, I think Bo Pelini learned that lesson very well. Look, just be Wilson behind the thing.
Yep.
Yeah, and maybe not. Maybe he's thriving doing like face modeling now. For all I know, I don't know. I don't follow him, but I know it's a fun account and all that. But yeah, I think there is something behind the mystique of Cyclone Larry, for example, or Bo Pelini or whatever. But yeah, Wilson, there are times where you get a pretty good look. You could tell what he kind of looked like, but it's still just enough was missing from the full picture that you didn't really see his full face, so it kept the mystery alive. But, yeah, you could still get a pretty good grasp, but that was a good call on Tim Allen's part, for sure.
Cyclone Larry doesn't miss a beat. His very next one, you up, Coach B. Ferentz?
Yeah. I did see some Iowa fans who were, I don't know if it was Iowa fans or just Iowa State fans joking around about, Brian Ferentz is available, so go hire him. And yeah, having some fun there with that rivalry, but no, it'll be interesting to see what Iowa State elects to do now. But that is, again, I'll say it for I think the third time. That is a loss. That is a notable loss, and that's a good young coach in the making to be probably a really good head coach somewhere in the NFL or in the college ranks one day, and perhaps at Iowa State when all is said and done.
Baylor plays tomorrow night at BYU. As in the two games tonight, again, K-State in Texas at 8 in Austin on ESPN2. The game between Iowa State and Houston at 8 o'clock, moved to 8 o'clock on ESPN. Jaden Nunn, who he's had moments, but has really gotten into a nice groove, was named both the newcomer and player of the week in the Big 12, the guard from Baylor who transferred in. So good to see him getting a little bit of love. There are a couple of more things I want to get to, and we are open until Paul's top 5. Including, remember we brought up the devices and the helmet and how college football might be going to that a lot quicker than we think. I've got some quotes from coaches in the 5 o'clock hour on that. And also, Greg Byrne of Alabama. We've discussed the trend, although still too early, of coaches leaving college to go to the NFL. We'll hear a couple of notes from him. You were going to add something, Craig, before we went to the break? I
was going to say, if you need something to talk about, I mean, Baylor's win over West Virginia on Saturday. Didn't really touch on that from that game that Jaden hadn't played in.
They got into them really quickly. I turned the game on around the early second half. I kind of followed it on the Gamecast. And there was a time when I was like, they're going to play with their food again. It got down to like 10, and then they just kept separate and shot free throws incredibly well in that game too.
Well, and for as much hand-wringing as there has been kind of at times, not that it's been crazy or anything like that, they're just a game back. I mean, they're just a single game back.
They won like 5 straight.
Yeah, they're just a single game back. And tonight they're going to be tied with somebody as far as the loss column goes because both Houston and Iowa State have 3 losses. Mm-hmm. So there's Baylor with 4, and they're the only one with 4. Kansas now with 5 losses in Big 12 play. But, yeah, I mean, whoever drops that next game, you're going to have 4 losses just like the Bears do. So just interesting to see them take care of West Virginia, who's obviously – just struggling mightily throughout this basketball season at the very bottom of the standings right now, along with Oklahoma State. So those 2 programs are really just probably getting close to wanting it to all be over at this stage, I would think. It's not been a whole lot of fun.
Although
but
Oklahoma State did win on Saturday.
They did get a nice win on Saturday, so that was very nice to see for Mike Boynton and company. But, it was a good showing by Jaden Nunn. Definitely deserved some weekly honors, and good to see them not play with their food and just go out, beat somebody, and move on and go celebrate on Saturday night.
All right. I said they had won 5 in a row. They have won 5 of 6. They had the loss to Kansas, but that's not a big deal.
I mean, it kind of is losing to an average bunch like that. You know? I mean,
that's a bad loss, like Texas losing to UCF.
Yeah.
What's the temperature in the Catalina household after the latest Jayhawks loss?
They played a beat-up Oklahoma team.
They won on
took advantage of a wounded duck.
Thinking of Texas Tech in that blowout from last week. That's still sitting with me.
They won on the road, which is a much-needed thing.
Mm-hmm. So during the Tech game, we can bring that up. I think it's a good idea. During the Tech game, you probably start downstairs watching the game together. How quickly do you are smart enough to head up to the man cave?
Actually, that night she just turned the game off completely and barred us for having it on because it was so bad. Like,
well, what if you wanted to watch it?
I didn't want to be able to describe to her what happened. I really didn't. It would have been worse. Because here's the thing. She would start to ask me, and it would be like, hey, tell me about the time they amputated that guy's leg. And then I have to keep going through it. It's not like she wants to hear it.
So you don't go upstairs. You got that
I didn't
upstairs.
That night. No, yeah, I did not.
And turn it on silent?
I've done that before. That game got so out of hand so quickly.
It didn't matter.
It didn't matter. Yeah. You know, that there was no thought of like, let me go upstairs and watch this in case they cut into this 12-point lead.
You text her and go, hey, you may want to turn it back on, that thing?
No, okay. It would have been that. I've done that before, but no. No. Look, I'll just tell you, skipping to Baylor for a second, 2 games in a row that they've controlled from beginning to end. It's the first time they've done that since the conference started. And I look at that under 8 timeout as the kind of the key moment of where you say beginning to end. When you get to the under 8 timeout and you're kind of in control of the half, and then you start the second half and you remain in control.
Yeah, you get a 6-0 run off the top.
Yeah, that's what they did both games in a row, which they have not done.
No,
they have not done since the conference season
And
started.
not many people have really done that in the Big 12, although there has been. You're going to have some blowouts during that time. All right, the next hour, Coach Com. That's the helmet device and what some coaches that used it during bowl games said about it. Also, what's going on with the NBA All-Star Game? What in the hell is it now? And there's a chance that college basketball with the NIL may take out a team in the G League. All that and more, the 5 o'clock hour is next.
Richard Carr, Buick, GMC, Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on and the people that I've counted on many times over the years, and thousands of other Central Texans have done the same with great effect. Great pricing, great customer service, great options. Right now they're celebrating 25 years in Waco this March, and the party is starting now, however, still a couple of weeks away from March. The party's starting now with the big anniversary sale savings. They're not going to wait until the month of March, so take advantage of saving thousands on a GMC Sierra SLT crew cab. Also, if you're a qualified buyer, you can get 1.9% financing for 72 months on those GMC Sierras. And also, military and first responders could save an additional $500. So plenty of savings to be had on the all-new GMC Sierra SLT crew cabs. Just one of the many offerings of new vehicles going on right now at the 25th anniversary celebration at Richard Carr. They also have some pre-owned cars and trucks and SUVs as well to choose from if you're not looking to go the brand new route. That means that you can peruse the lot and check out the dozens, the hundreds of vehicles that they've brought in, full lot of quality pre-owned cars and trucks in stock, over 100 to choose from, all inspected with a 172-point inspection and that Richard Carr seal of approval, so you can drive with peace of mind, plus a financing goal at Richard Carr that is 100% credit approval. They say yes when others say no. So check out the dealership that's been in business for 25 years in Central Texas and has built a reputation throughout that time as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Run by proud Central Texans, proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Thank you for calling your local Marco's Pizza. We're turning up the heat with our new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Fresh, house-made dough is topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers. At only $5.99, this limited-time product is a hot deal. Add it to your order while you can. A Marco's team member will be with you shortly.
Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it, and that offer on the Reaper Cheesy Bread is available right now at any of the 5 Marco's Pizza locations in Waco, including Belmead, China Spring, Robinson, Woodway, and Hewitt. Order online at marcos.com. Call for a pickup or delivery. Marco's Pizza is turning up the heat with their all-new Reaper Cheesy Bread with fresh, hot, house-made dough topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers, and only $5.99 and for a limited time only. Marco's Pizza, the fastest-growing pizza brand in America, 5 locations in Waco, and the new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
You know, we have discussed it's way too early, kind of like the way too early top 25 for the next year that they do as soon as the national championship at any sport is over. But we have discussed that it's probably way too early to figure out whether there's a trend. And by the way, the Iowa State Shieldhouse going to the Chargers that's a hell of a promotion. Go to an offensive coordinator to become the passing game coordinator in the NFL. However, it's a guy that had a pretty good future, 33 years old, up and coming as a head coach maybe in college. So
Rams, right?
The Rams. I said Chargers.
Yeah.
Rams. So Mike Rodak had this. He did a story on Greg Byrne, who's the AD at Alabama. This is somewhat ironic here, but he told Tide 1009 or 100.9 that he's concerned about the trend of college coaches leaving for the NFL. I think the NFL lifestyle is becoming more attractive to coaches in general. And so is it? And that's interesting that an AD at a school like Alabama, by the way, they've dipped into that themselves. This all came because they Byrne brought up Boston College head coach Jeff Hafley going to the Packers. It's certainly one of the less resourced head coaching jobs out there, and I don't say that disparagingly at all. They've got a great program at Boston College, but he left to go become a defensive coordinator in the NFL. You would have never thought about that in the past.
No, you wouldn't have. Well, one, look, money in the NFL is just going to keep going up and up and up. I mean, for their coordinators and everything. Because, again, if you want the good coordinators, you want to keep them in the league, you're going to have to raise their salary. Just like the coordinator salaries went up in college football because you don't want them to leave. And then now that, like, there are, there's nonsensical rules or things that just intersect so hard in college football. The NFL has always had a very, and you're going to work hard, but it's always had a very regimented and blocked off, structured offseason. So it goes from this thing to this thing to this thing, and then that's it.
And let me read this quote, Craig, and then you respond, please. I think the NFL, from a calendar standpoint, from not having to deal with a lot of the other extracurricular things you deal with in the college ranks when it comes to NIL, transfer portal, recruiting calendar, I think the NFL lifestyle is becoming more attractive to coaches in general. And when they have a good opportunity to get there, some of them are taking advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, I think that all rings true, and I do think it's too early still to say that there is absolutely a movement of college coaches going to the NFL and it being for all those different reasons, but I do think there are signs that it's starting to head in that direction, and there you have Greg Byrne going on the record and saying the complete obvious there. I'll put it this way. I'm a college football fan first and foremost. It's my favorite sport. It always has been more than anything else, and I still love it, and it's still number one. Baseball's had its time. I liked basketball there for a while, but I just don't care as much anymore about that side of things outside of the Mavericks. But yeah, college football is my bread and butter, and I'll tell you, as a fan, the NFL lifestyle feels more appealing because I'm fortunate in that the team I root for is always going to have money, and they're always going to be in a good conference, and they're going to be just fine as far as realignment and all of that stuff goes. But even still, I'm looking around, and they're one of the ones that benefits from everything and going, this isn't really all that fun, of not knowing who's on the roster, not knowing, like, at any moment what massive change is set to occur. Your quarterback could win the Heisman and then get bought by your rival the very next year. That doesn't happen regularly, but it could happen in theory the way that things are currently set up. I think that it's just too unruly, and so I'm looking at that as just a fan. I'm not saying I'm any less of a college football fan. I'm just saying, as a fan, I can see why the NFL is becoming more appealing just from a fan standpoint, because I know that my team's going to get a fair crack at the draft, and that the way that they finish is going to depend on, that's going to set up who they get to pick, and then they have these rules in place about how they can go about tweaking their roster, but they can't just go grab the starting wide receiver from somebody without, breaking a rule. Like, you've got to do it. Like, there's tampering. At least a framework there. Yeah. There's tampering that actually exists. There's not agents and DMs offering money to high school kids. There's not all that nefariousness still going on. So that part of it, I do like, although I still do love the madness of college football. So basic point I'm getting at is, if I feel that way as a fan who has no skin in the game other than just rooting for the product, how would somebody who's actually working on that product feel with having to deal with all of those challenges as compared to, hey, you don't have to hit the road recruiting for one. You go bounce around and you go to some pro days and you maybe go visit a campus here and there, but for the most part, it's all set up and structured. You know that nobody can swoop in and offer an extra $1 million the night before you're getting ready to sign this guy because you just pick them. So that's just the draft example, but the hours on the road, the hours dealing with the conversations having nothing to do with football, but with all of the other stuff that you're dealing with, the year-to-year aspect of it. I think it's obvious, and anybody who's trying to argue that there's not an obvious sort of switch in the room going on, I don't know. Maybe I'm just missing out on something. I don't think so, though, because I think it's pretty clear that there's a more favorable structure in place and a more favorable schedule and same kind, if not more money, and that's all in the NFL right now. I don't know, outside of just a love for developing players or a love for Saturdays, what inherent advantages college football has over the NFL right now as far as a coaching job goes. Now, maybe you'd say the pressure, but I don't know. I guess that would depend on the job in college football, because there are some where you can get by just making bowl games, and that's fine. There are others that if you're not winning 10 games by year 3, you're on the hot seat and done, and the NFL can be a little bit different. But, yeah, for the most part, I think the NFL is as attractive as it's ever been for a college football coach.
Well, here's another quote from Greg Byrne, and his school, by the way, is guilty of being a part of this. The group of 5 head coaches leaving now for assistant jobs at Power 5, including Alabama. Maurice Lindquist from Buffalo, a head coach. South Alabama's Kane Womack as a head coach, now both at Alabama. Georgia State coach, remember last week, Sean Elliott, last week leaving for South Carolina to become a tight ends coach and run game coordinator. In some ways, I can't blame them. I do remind them, though, that if you do have to go through choppy waters, there's not a better place to do that than Alabama. But that doesn't mean that we're immune from those choppy waters, because we still deal with that on a daily basis.
Well, especially now that Nick Saban's gone. No, but it's true. Like, you might be the most advantaged in the marketplace, but that doesn't mean that you still don't have to go out and compete for it. You can. McDonald's still has to sell cheeseburgers against everybody else, even though that they know they're always going to. They still have to maintain the top rung or whatever. So, yeah, it is different, and these are the things that you fight against collective bargaining, you fight against that, you fight against all this. But if you did it, your life would probably be easier because the people that are doing it, they do have, like, professional sports have structure in the offseason. There's consequences. Look, and if you want to say, like, oh, when does that happen in the NFL? Just a couple years ago, the Dolphins got in trouble for tampering with Tom Brady and lost a first-round draft pick and a third-round draft pick, I believe, this year. So, again, there are consequences.
Did they turn around and sue the NFL and try to disrupt the entire organization? No, that don't happen there?
No, Stephen Ross took his medicine and
shut the hell up.
And shut up about it because he didn't want to lose his team. And
because otherwise he's going to get fined $50 million, even if he's a billionaire.
That's what I do appreciate now at this point, because college football is so many blurry lines, and I'm just one that operates better when it's like just clear cut, like tell me what's what and I'll adjust to that. But like the whole blurry lines, and sometimes it matters and sometimes I don't know, that part to me of college football is just hard to kind of wrap my arms around. But I don't think that we're all necessarily talking about the exact same thing here. I mean, it's one thing for the Buffalo head coach in college to go join the Alabama staff. There's only 32 jobs in the NFL. You know, and in the NIL world, being the Buffalo head coach isn't what it was like 5 years ago. Because now all the work that you put in can be over just like that, because somebody slides into the DMs of your roster and starts taking them and spreading them around the country to this ACC school or that SEC school or whatever. So, I mean, if you're not at one of the best jobs in college football, you're always being attacked, really. You're always on the defense, and that's sort of been the case for the most part. I mean, you're always at an inherent disadvantage. Basically, anybody versus, let's say, in comparison to a Texas or to an Ohio State or to a Michigan, they've always had advantages, but they have more than they've ever had before. Like, there's no lack of advantages they have at this point, because now even when they don't recruit well, they can just go pick apart the rosters of the people below them and make up for it in like 6 months. Yep. There's no downfall to being one of those schools. Like nothing matters if you make a mistake, because you have the money to overcome that. Whereas the lower levels, like, dude, you landed that receiver, that's a big deal. But as hard as you work to get him, you now have to work twice as hard just to keep him for a second year. And so, like, if you're at Buffalo, where's the enjoyment in that? Yeah. The guy that you actually get that maybe makes it worthwhile for you, you're constantly having to battle him from the moment he steps foot on campus. And that's just a small example of one player on one roster and one school. So, then you add in the NIL and just forget other people trying to pick apart your guys, just you in general having to keep your roster happy now with NIL deals. And so the whole package, the recruiting added to that, it's just, I think it's as much of an unbalanced field as we've ever seen. So Chip Kelly was a definite wave, because that was a guy leaving a big job for a coordinator. Now, you can argue that he was on his way out regardless, and he just cut it off at the pass, and that's probably to some extent what happened. But still, it wouldn't be shocking, I think, at this point, if he just said, like, no, I just got tired of doing all the other nonsense. I really just want to go coach the offense. We'd believe him if we didn't know about the hot seat, because it all sounds so dadgum stressful.
But even if you're on a hot seat, you're going to get paid if you're fired.
But the hot,
he had to end up probably paying a buyout himself.
The hot seat is probably the bigger part of that. But it's not the whole story, right? So it's part of it.
It is.
And look, when you throw in NIL into this, and you throw in the transfer portal, if you're Maurice Lindquist at Buffalo, you don't even necessarily have to worry about somebody calling up your best player. If your best player just goes in the transfer portal because he's trying to gauge his value, teams may not even looked at him yet, which is highly unlikely. But if he's good enough, then all of a sudden people are going to go.
Teams have already not only looked at him, they've already probably contacted him through a third person.
But no, my point being is, even if you didn't experience that with a guy, him putting his name in the portal and then you going, hey, we need a linebacker. Like, oh, look at this guy's film. So they even does it for you. So even when it doesn't happen to you, when you're not tampered with, all the player has to do is say, I'm leaving, and then you will get tampered with.
Mike Porter in the chat room. I love college football. Definitely my favorite as well. I love all the conferences, but with the NIL, player portal, conference realignment, networks and streaming services, and other turmoil makes it hard. I don't think you could have written it any better than that. That doesn't mean we're saying that people or players or coaches don't deserve to make their decisions, but it does, man. if we're worn out by just covering it, what is it like, as you said, when you're in the middle of it?
Yeah, I mean, you can't even celebrate fully half the things that used to be able to celebrate, in full, like landing a big 5-star recruit. You got him for 3-4 years, barring something completely unforeseen. And now, for all you know, he just signed yesterday, and there's already a team in his DMs or contacting his grandpa or whatever, trying to, get into his head for next year. And just so I think all those things combined, again, still my number one sport, but it has taken some hits here lately with just the whole calamity and the whole craziness of it all. Part of that's the fun. Part of that's what we love about it. Like realignment, for example. As much as it hurts and sucks if you're on one end of it at times, like the Pac-12 last year or Oregon State and Washington State still right now, it can be something that sucks, but at the same time, still love college football and the way that it's set up, even if it's not always the most fun thing in the world. But yeah, it's just it's getting harder to kind of be as joyful about it all because there's so many crazy things that are happening all the time that just never seem to cease.
If you took a poll of the 131 schools in Division I or FBS football, if you took a poll of how much of you not enjoying watching the games when the season begins, but how many of you actually enjoy football today, there might be 15 or 20 schools that say they do. Because they're the ones that they're the ones that can survive losing their own player or two because they can turn around and get somebody else. And the timing of it is crazy, but it's, And it all because of nobody had any opportunities to do what they wanted to do or get paid, et cetera, for the longest of time, and now the NCAA has it being jammed right down their throat.
Well, not everything has to be like, do you love it as much as you used to, and I'll romanticize it and all those things. I still love it. I still love college football. That's why I prefaced everything I said with that, but I'm not a casual or less of a college football fan or anything like that because I would like to just see a little bit of rulemaking, and I think that's sort of where most people are at this point is just to have an idea of what's going on and what to expect, and that's the benefit of the NFL is you already know the calendar, you know when things are allowed and when they're not, and that's something even college football doesn't have a great grasp on is their calendar. It's too crowded in December and January, and it's this and that. So anyways, they've got a lot of things to work out. They can make the product better. Let's all agree on that. The product can be better than it is, and that's what they're working on and trying to get through. But I know we got some breaking news over here for Baylor football.
No.
We do.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
It's right in front of you.
Alabama hiring Christian Robinson as its linebackers coach. Named multiple SEC programs who pursued him. He lands former Baylor linebackers coach who played linebacker at Georgia, coached at Florida, Ole Miss, and also at Auburn.
Yep, so Alabama's just shopping at the Baylor store this week, aren't they? With Christian Robinson. Now, I'm not sure, given the fact that they're kind of reshuffling the deck, how big of a loss this will be. But it's still, it's that weird time right before spring where now you're going to have to hire two new assistant coaches because they're both going to be on the same flight to Tuscaloosa. That's kind of, all this stuff now keeps kind of feeling like it's coming out of nowhere, and you never know. But, man, the staff that Kalen DeBoer is building it's from all over. Like, he didn't just – transported some of them and then some of them left, but, really he is overturning every rock he can to find people.
All right, I'm going to say this without having any ability to, text anybody and to try to – this is a bad sign for Dave Aranda and his staff. It's a bad sign. Yes, Alabama, I get it, with Kapilovic and then also with Christian Robinson or anybody for the most part, again, except those 5 or 7 of the schools that also look at eye to eye with them. But you're about a month away from spring drills. You've already had, because of changes you made when it comes to the coordinators, and then you become the defensive coordinator. Matt Pallage does what he's doing. Yeah, you hired Patterson, all that, but, man, this is not a good look at all. And I don't care if they're going to Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, or Texas or whatever else. These are two names that you had locked in. They've been with the team for what, about a month, right?
Well, Christian Robinson's been around for over a year now.
No, I'm talking about the staff itself together. But now you lose another coach on your staff, no matter if it's Alabama, and you wonder how much of it is at Alabama and how much of it is someone just wanting to leave the staff at Baylor.
Well, I mean, it's Alabama, so I don't think that's all that complicated, really. And I can see where it's taken as a bit of a bad sign for Dave Aranda. I mean, it's a bad sign from the standpoint of now you have to go search for 2 assistant coaches less than a month from spring ball. Let's just start there and work our way out to like the more, I guess, bigger picture concerns. But yeah, I mean, if Alabama, I'm sorry, if I'm working at Baylor right now and Alabama came to call me, guys, I'm probably taking that job. I mean, more money, more security. I think that's probably a move most people would make. He's from the SEC, Christian Robinson originally, and so he's just basically going back to where he knows best. As it was pointed out in the tweet, he's been at Florida, he's been at Ole Miss, he's been at Auburn, he played at Georgia. So this is home for him. I can't speak to Kapilovic as much as having those deep of ties, but yeah, just when it felt like Dave Aranda had wrapped up the offseason, had settled everything down, and was getting ready to just get to work and get to know these players and get into spring football. Now you're having to go, after making multiple hires on offense, now go basically redo one of those hires on offense and now go look for another linebackers coach. So, yeah, it's not great. It's not great timing. I don't know if it's a big picture concern that this reflects on him in any way, other than I think just the job opportunities are bigger for both of those guys at Alabama. But it's not good, that's for sure. You don't want to be here in mid-February having already made a handful of coaching hires, now having suddenly to go make 2 more in the span of 10 hours or whatever, how many hours it was between these announcements here. So, yeah, that's rough for old Dave Aranda for sure.
Someone that I do know follows the recruiting, what Baylor has done or not. The first thing they asked is name the guys that he's acquired as far as recruited, and that might be deeper into the system. It is deeper in the system that I'm looking at. But yet another change. Wow. Kapilovic gone from earlier today, Alabama, and now Christian Robinson, linebackers coach, he is gone too. And now you have to ask this question. Does Patterson get more than just a analyst job?
I mean, is he coaching offensive line? No. So is he coaching linebackers? If he's going to, then maybe. Yeah. Well, I'm talking myself through it. So no, he's not coaching offensive line. So if he wants to coach linebackers, then sure, I guess that's a possibility. I don't know, but that's something that I'm sure that they will dive into and look into is what possibilities are already in house rather than having to go back out and look for new candidates. So if anything, maybe he can chime in with some people's names that would make sense here. But, yeah, it's back to the drawing board, it sounds like, from the outside here for Dave Aranda.
All right, so 2 Baylor coaches, full-time coaches, are both on their way to Alabama. The logo and the brand and Kalen DeBoer, and yet another part of the shrapnel because Nick Saban decided he wanted to kind of enjoy life a little bit more, although he loved coaching too. All right, that's from Bruce Feldman, by the way, to give him the credit he deserves. I wanted to bring up the quotes from coaches that use those devices in their helmets during the bowl games that we discussed because of the signal and sign stealing of what was going on, or at least allegations against Michigan. And then that was brought up. Why not just put stuff in your helmet? Joey McGuire, Texas Tech. We practiced with it 4 times into the game. And it was probably one of the cleanest operations when it comes to the sideline and communication. Thomas Hammock, head coach at Northern Illinois. We're a huddle team, so talking to the quarterback, we were able to put in more offense motions and also shifts, make sure everyone was right. It really helped us out. We didn't have any procedural penalties. We did a lot of the offense and stayed clean, a lot of that due to helmet communications. And then Butch Jones at Arkansas State, we still signaled in because receivers got to get them. We wanted to keep as minimal change as possible for the flow of the game. We have a system in place of what we do. With a limited amount of time, we didn't want to disrupt that. Those are 3 coaches with quotes that used that coach comm in the helmet, thanks to Chris Vanini. That was a story from him in theathletic.com. 524, this is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. President's Day sale continues through the rest of the day. Blowout for the Ram Truck Month promotion. Until the end of the month, That's a little bit more than a week. You can get 0% APR financing for 72 months in the 2024 Ram 1500 Crew Lone Star. 2023 Ram 1500 Limited Crew 4-wheel drive, $15,000 off MSRP. And then also first responders continue to get $500 off. Limited supplies on those particular offers and those particular vehicles. Ram Truck Month, President's Day sale going on right now. Allen Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, and more to come as they hit the end of the month. Limited supplies, so right now, and you go by their dealership, they have cars, vehicles, trucks, SUVs on the lot. Great sales staff. AJ was the one who helped me out, but there are many inside that building that can help you out. Ted Teague, CEO and General Manager of Allen Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and Equal Housing Lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports. Are you a Sikkim 365 superfan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
One other note about that game that we featured, the Big 12 game from earlier today with Houston, with Chris Gardner joining us. Houston and Iowa State tonight. Houston playing Iowa State and then 11th ranked Baylor, based on today's rankings coming out, represents the highest ranked opponents in back-to-back games in the regular season since the 2001-2002 season for the Cougars, when they went back-to-back against 5th ranked UCLA and number 4 Kansas. So and that can happen. They can flip on you pretty quickly in the Big 12.
Yeah, this is a ridiculously crazy league, and it changes week to week. And, cold streaks, you think a team is really down, and then all of a sudden they have 2 nice wins, 3 nice wins. And you think, oh, they fixed it. And then it's a temporary blip because it's just about who's coming in that next day. Like right now you could say, Texas Tech had the most uneven week of all. They drilled Kansas and then lost to Iowa State. So where they're pretty much back where they started. Nothing's moved forward or back for them. They're just kind of right where they started. They look really good one day and not as good the next. And that's pretty much the case for most of the league.
Baylor won 5 in a row, then lost 3 in a row, and then has won 5 of 6. And that first 5-game winning streak, I think, was not all of the Big 12. But, man, you're right. You blink, you burp, and you could be in a 3-game losing streak. Now, one thing about Alabama hiring Robinson and Kapilovic, that just, I guess, says that Dave Aranda had put together a pretty damn good staff, huh?
Yeah, I understand why you jump to, this is bad for Dave Aranda, but it's not like he did anything wrong here. He hired 2 guys that Kalen DeBoer and Alabama wanted. So if anything, it's a compliment that you apparently hired some pretty good coaches to fill some big roles on that Alabama staff, but it's just unfortunate that because of all of the coaching carousel moves and how late this thing is dragged out, that they were still looking and some things were still in play for them as far as needing people. And it just so happens that your people were next up on their list or at the top of their list. And so you get them plucked away, but I'm not surprised that we ran down Christian Robinson's background. Not surprised at all. And quite frankly, not surprised even if somebody has no background in the SEC that they would choose to leave Baylor for Alabama. As far as a position coach goes, I don't think that's all that shocking or surprising. And guess what? It's a better job. And it's a better job for a lot of the reasons that we just listed, because even though everybody gets dinged by the transfer portal or by NIL or by whatever, they get dinged a lot less and have a lot less to worry about than a Baylor does. So, it's just a bigger job at a bigger school and a bigger program. But yeah, it's unfortunate that somebody has to be on the losing side of that. And for Dave Aranda, it's a double whammy of a linebackers coach he hired just 2 years ago and a guy who never even coached a practice that's been on staff for 2 months to coach the O-line. So I'm sure there's emergency meetings or what have you going on right now over on campus, but it sucks for Baylor for sure to lose 2 guys in one fell swoop thanks to Kalen DeBoer. It's part of the business, but they were finally starting to feel good about things, and it felt like things had finally sort of settled down. And I guess to our point from earlier is things never truly settle down in college football these days. So even when you think you can take a breath, you still have to be on the defensive. And even if you are, it still may not matter all that much because just events elsewhere open up a hole to where you're suddenly getting dinged and completely blindsided.
Somebody asked about the offensive line commitments for the class of 2025. We mentioned the running back out of Oklahoma. That's not Kapilovic, and that's surely not Christian Robinson. 2 of their offensive line commitments, at least commitments, which I don't know what that means anymore at any team in college football, have committed well before Kapilovic became the head coach with the offensive line coach with Dave Aranda. Top 16 seeds released over the weekend. This was as the weekend hit. The 1 seeds Purdue. They were beaten by a fledgling Ohio State team with a coaching change. UConn bludgeoned Marquette. Arizona won. They beat Arizona State by 45 or whatever it was. And then Houston, of course, with the win against Texas. The number 2 seeds, Tennessee, North Carolina, KU, and Marquette. The 3 seeds include Baylor and Iowa State, Duke and Alabama. And the 4 seeds are San Diego State, which a lot of discussion about that from the analysts who cover men's basketball quite a bit. Wisconsin, and then also Auburn, and Auburn was thumped by Kentucky
at home,
and then Illinois in one of the other regions.
Yeah, I don't have much a problem with this. I think you could, swap a 3 and a 4 here and there potentially. A week ago, I would have told you Baylor was a 4. After this week, I kind of think they're a 3, but that's where I've hovered. Like they're a 3 or a 4 seed, barring them getting ridiculously hot. And what we've seen now is, while it is important to be a 1 seed, and this year I do think if you look at these 4 1 seeds, they do maybe have a bit of a step on everybody else, especially UConn. They're just in Purdue. They're just really, really good. It's about the matchups you get, but the better starting lineup you have, the better matchup you get, the better draw you get in the tournament is about the run you can go on. And, I'll just use Baylor as an example because we've covered them so closely. I don't think anything necessarily less of them in the 2 years since they've won the title that they haven't made another deep run, because in both those years, they got probably, if you would ask them, like, here's the teams that match up with them the worst at what they're doing right now, they were both in their bracket, or they were the hottest team going. Like, they lost to North Carolina in a ridiculous, crazy game that went into overtime and had almost the biggest comeback in tournament history. But they lost to North Carolina, and then the minute that we saw, Smoky, you and I texted about it, the minute we saw Creighton pop in their bracket last year, well, that's a team that the one thing they do well is the one thing that Baylor has yet to figure out how to stop, and it played out exactly as you thought it would. So, it's about matchups. If they're in a different bracket with a team that's opposite of Creighton last year, maybe they're in the Sweet 16. Maybe they're in the Elite 8 because it just fell for them that way. The same, like Purdue lost early last year. Maybe if they're in a different spot, just move to a different city, playing a different team in the first week, they start off hotter than they did.
Yeah, that's all very well and true, but you can't be Scott Drew and have this program where it's going and not make the Sweet 16 for another year in a row. In matchups after a while, you just got to deal with that. Great programs overcome the matchups. What y'all are saying is very valid, but for a team that was riding the high of a national championship just a couple years ago, everything else seems to be operating pretty well, facilities and recruiting and all that. But these last 2 years have been pretty quick exits in the tournament, and so he's not on a hot seat and never will be, as far as I'm concerned. It would take just some crazy extreme things to happen for that to be the case. But as far as feeling as though he kind of needs to get a couple of wins in the tournament, I think this year is definitely a year where you would expect and hope for that after the quick exits. But, it is, like you said, based all on matchups. But at some point, Duke and North Carolina and these schools that you want to be and be like, they didn't just, it was a bad matchup. They overcame bad matchups and went on to win and beat teams that weren't good matchups and then continue to carve out their legacies. And that's something that eventually Baylor's going to have to do. It can't just be every year, it was a bad matchup. So we haven't been to the Sweet 16 in 6 years because we've had bad matchup after bad matchup. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
From Baylor 88 Bear on the text line, I just go in there and check it consistently. Craig, you're spot on. As someone who likes college football, I find myself gravitating to the NFL. I will always follow Baylor and go when I can, but all of this going on gets old quick. That's from Baylor 88. Thank you, Baylor 88 Bear on the text line.
Yeah, I think that there is just different levels for everybody, and some people are hardcore college football fans and love diving into every detail, and we're basically there. And then there's others who maybe it's more of a casual experience and they wanted a little bit more of a black and white as far as the rules go, or just the passion of following it as closely. And I think because we follow it so closely, that's part of the just, it's like you just see it all the time of all of the constant craziness. But yeah, I think even for fans who have more of a relaxed approach, it can be something that is grinding on you at this point because what happened to that guy? Why is he not on our team? We just signed him. Oh, well, he's sorry. He went to Ohio State for $700,000 or whatever. That gets old after a while. And I don't know that unless you're a top school, which is like the same 20 schools we constantly talk about. And I don't even know if it's 20
I think
really.
It's about 12.
Yeah. Beyond that, it's always been slanted in their favor, but it's just so slanted now that it's a little less fun. It honestly is because it's just so geared towards that, and that's not their fault. That's just real laws, and the NCAA getting away with some BS for about however many several decades, and so it's not like it's Oklahoma's fault that NIL's a thing now necessarily, or you blame Michigan for people being able to transfer willy-nilly. But gosh dang, it is, unless you're one of those 10 or 12, a really frustrating process where your moments of being able to enjoy something are fleeting, and more so than ever they're fleeting, because you know that even if you get to enjoy it in that second, it could be drastically different by the time you wake up the next day. And that's not as fun as signing a rookie, and hey, that rookie might not pan out, but you know that if he does, he's your rookie he's your team for 5 years. And then when the time comes, he can negotiate and you can re-sign him fairly, or another team has an opportunity. And you know what?
And if another team tries to take him in that, whatever's that,
restricted free
you
agent
get compensated.
Or you get compensated, or they do it the wrong way and they get hit for it, and you kind of sort of maybe get hit, like we've seen with the NCAA trying to come after Tennessee. But what does Tennessee immediately? Oh, we'll turn around, we're going to sue you. And you have no power here. And then that whole who's even in power is a question mark. I think that's what I probably dislike the most, is just that there's not an authority figure that's respected, and that something comes down and that's it, and then boom, you move on to it. It's everything is a lawsuit. Every single thing is a lawsuit. And that part of having to basically live half on the field and half in court, that's what's kind of warned me as far as enjoying it to the same level that I do.
And when you have this kind of unhinged free agency like you have, one of the things I think that hurt college basketball for a little while was that, and it might start hurting it again, but it never really affected college football because there was no one and done. But, the reason I think Duke got to be so popular in the early and mid-'90s was because Christian Laettner and Bobby Hurley and Grant Hill and those guys were together for a few years. You had to watch that team again and again and again. And so that was the team, if you were a fan of college basketball, you could identify with. You watched them for 3 or 4 years together play. Some guys leave and they're staggered, but it wasn't that this is a completely new team every year. So it's harder to keep track. And then if you're on the, like Craig mentioned earlier, if you're on the receiving end of the departures more than the arrivals, it's going to be hard for you to really fall in love with your team, because one of the things that makes you fall in love with a team is your favorite player plays for that team. So if your favorite player was, you're
talking about college?
I'm talking about college, yes.
I don't think a college fan roots for a team because of their favorite players.
I think it helped.
I think it helps because that's their team.
I think everybody's different.
I think younger generations. I think younger generation, you follow players a little bit more, and especially since you've got a time where, all right, if you were going to be I'm trying to think of a Texas basketball fan because of Kevin Durant, who's only there a year. I mean, and then there's another guy that comes along and you're a fan of this guy. So it's different. And so if you're a fan, you decide that you really like West Virginia because you like their running back, and then the next year he's in Tennessee, you're like, well, am I a Tennessee fan now? That's the other thing, is it's different things. There aren't, again, the generation that's younger than me probably is more of they kind of follow players.
No, I get that. I get that. I wonder if it's fantasy football has anything to do with that too. By the way, had a guy that I know who just said, what a brutal day for Dave, and then also said, Patterson linebackers coach, but I wonder if he's getting a buyout from what TCU is paying him, can he become a position coach? And that's something to learn along the way as we get to the future of how Dave and how quickly he responds by replacing Christian Robinson and also Chris Kapilovic. He might have somebody on the line right now, but we'll see. But that's the kind of the neat storyline from today. One quick note. Yesterday, I was at the Foster Pavilion. I went to go watch Baylor women and Texas Tech. It was a blowout game. Britney Griner's jersey was retired. I thought that it was well done. Crowd was very respectful. People were concerned about what was. I didn't expect anything at all about that. She was there. Any kind of blowback because there might be somebody booing or whatever because of anything that Britney has done or what. It was well done. I thought the entire ceremony was good. They got it done before the game. Britney had raw and real emotions. Congratulations to Nikki Collin and whoever else was involved in that. I do know we followed her. I interviewed her many times. Congratulations. The jersey's retired. It should be, no matter what you may think of anything she's done off the field or on the field.
I absolutely loathe and hate that has to be like the caveat when talking about her. I'm glad that it was a great ceremony, and I'm glad that everybody involved had a good time. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that that even has to be said. I think if she played for Tennessee, that Tennessee fans would not blink twice inducting Britney Griner into their Hall of Fame. I think this is one of the only instances where there's like this sensitivity about, I don't know. I just find that to be a unique thing that would not be the case everywhere else, and I guess that's what makes it unique, but I think that's just silly, and good for her. She earned it. She deserved it. She's part of the reason why that arena's there in so many ways, if you really think about it, or she contributed to that, yeah, congratulations to Britney. I think anything of like, well, I don't know, any question about there even being a negative reaction is just, I think that speaks so ill of the people who would think that.
You know what the NFL does when they elect guys into the Hall of Fame? They don't discuss anything other than what kind of player they were. Well, some other sports is different.
And look, for Britney, look, the fans here never stopped liking her. It was the head coach had a conflict with her. So, I mean, not to dive into that, but like the only reason this is even a question that Britney Griner would come back to her university at all was because the previous head coach made it so that she didn't. And whether, how much her feelings were justified in that, most of the time, especially when it comes to recruiting and promoting who you've had and who you've put in the program, whether the coaches or not, like, unless Britney Griner killed Kim Mulkey's dog, I don't think there's anything she should have done that would have been
act like she did, basically.
Yeah, and
it's crazy.
And other than that, you should be promoting that one of the greatest women's basketball players who has ever played or will ever played came to your university and won a national championship
and played for you.
And wants to be here. And you should have, if RG3 goes to games in Orlando for Baylor basketball, Britney Griner should be able to come to a game or two in Waco once in a while. It's insane that it wasn't happening. It was only because of one person.
I want to speak to a very small segment of people, but I feel like the only people who would have an issue with it's a very small segment, mind you, over mistakes that she's made, like going to an airport and having some vapes on her going to Russia. Very stupid. Stupidest thing you could do. Dumb mistake. I totally believe that she did it. I mean, I have no reason to believe otherwise, but will be the same people that's like, write her off, don't honor her, blah, 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 will be the same people that turn around and Sunday morning and talk about forgiveness at chapel.
There you go.
I can't stand those types of people. Yeah. So, I think it's ridiculous. Good for Britney. I'm glad she's hopefully getting her life in order. Long overdue honor and well-deserved.
Yeah, there was the part about the article on ESPN, the magazine, which is there a little bit. I wish we would have had a chance to visit with Britney, but she was not available, at least not to me or anyone else in the local media, which that's disappointing. Maybe the next time she will be.
And that's understandable. If that's where you have like a vendetta or you have ill will still, that was, 10-plus years ago for one?
It was the spring of 13.
Spring of 2013. We're in 2024.
11 years ago, yeah.
So if you're still holding to that 11 years later from the, 20-year-old at the time, then by all means, now I can see at least where you're coming from with that, because there were comments that were disparaging about the program, and there were comments that were disparaging about the university, and they were not all true, as we all know.
Yep.
But they weren't reported that way. So I can understand that part of it, but there is an element that I've come across of, like, she made the mistake in Russia, and so, oh my God, I can't believe. And so I just think that's ridiculous, because they show up at church on Sunday and then act like a totally opposite person.
Or go to church and say something, all the things they need to say, then walk out the door. And did you see, by the way, that scared the hell out of me today. I had somebody contact me that Pop Smoak passed away. Did you know who that was, a rapper?
He passed away like a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I know, but it was on the timeline, and I'm like, no, that's not me. And he spells his name different than Craig and also me.
I mean, if it had been 2 years ago and you're still sitting here, I would be crapping my pants right now. So,
hey, don't forget to like and subscribe whenever you can. We're not done. Paul's Top 5 around the corner, but thank you to our great sponsors. Tonight, 10:30 on the local CW, 365 Sports Tonight, thanks to what they do. And I had 2 people over the weekend bring up that show. We appreciate them and you if you watch that show too. This is 365 Sports.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets, sirloin steaks, bone-in ribeyes, boneless ribeyes, and even prime rib. Cut specifically the way you want, the thickness that you want. They're all delicious. They have Norwegian salmon, mahi-mahi, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey, variety of cheese and several options of sausage links, and even regular jalapeno or cheese snack sticks. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, and ground beef, marinated beef or chicken fajitas, and always large briskets and tri-tip available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and tradition continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, a full-service butcher shop and bakery, open Monday through Saturday. The Bauer family, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Hey, before you start, somebody just said it's now time for Baylor to hire Nick Saban as an analyst.
Hey.
Good one, college football.
At this point,
plus.
Dave's got to do what Dave's got to do. So, I mean, at least kick the tires on that.
I would tell Gary Patterson, like, hey, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate whatever you have to say, but this guy's better than you. So, all right, number 5 in the top 5 Big 12 spring questions. We'll go through some of these kind of randomly. This is the one I popped up with today. Number 5, how quickly can Baylor install the new offense, get used to it in the spring, and then build on it, in the coming months and using that knowledge because it's going to be completely different. And it's probably better for the personnel they have. That doesn't mean that they're going to learn it or pick it up quickly, but they have new quarterbacks, new wide receivers. They'll have new linemen, new kind of everything across the board. So how quickly and how smoothly does this go in the install? Because the smoother it goes, the better it'll be once the fall comes around.
Well, they need an offensive line coach, so there's that now. But beyond that, I mean, this is big. But the thing with them is it's not just a one side or the other. Like their defense was their worst part of their entire team last year. So at worst with the with the offense, I mean, you needed to be good, but you also needed to just be better than it has been, but also really good in the case that your defense isn't that much better because you're going to have to score points. So, their offense is a pivotal part of this team because it's either going to be great balancing with the improvements on defense or it's going to have to kind of carry the load if the defense doesn't get much better. So, I think it's not an overly complicated system that Jake Spavital runs. I think it's been pointed out multiple times how there's a lot of guys on this roster who probably run something similar at some point or another. So I think that the carryover or the learning part of it should be okay. But that is something that they've got to be better and more explosive on offense. They just have had no explosion really the last couple of years. They've had spurts, but nothing consistent. And
it was more like if you saw a big play, it was like, damn.
Yeah, it was like, oh my gosh, that's the first time we've seen that in 3 weeks.
Mine was like, oh, who fell down?
Right, yeah.
And then most of the time, if you watch like a big play, you're like, oh, look, 58 fell down. Mm-hmm. All right, well, that good for them for noticing.
Basically, yeah.
Yep. Number 4, how healthy is Cam Rising? Can he help them out in spring, or is this going to be a push to the fall thing? Because his knee, by his own account, was obliterated. That's why we didn't see him this last year. And how healthy is he? And will he be the Cam Rising going forward that he was before? Because running was a very big part of his game, and the fearlessness he had back there was a very big part of his game. If he's not going to be the same, how does that change Utah? Now, look, there will be upgraded at quarterback even if he has to adapt his game just because of his skills as a passer. But how healthy is Cam Rising? A big question for me as Utah now moves into the Big 12.
Well, I think he'll be as healthy as he could possibly be. He's had so much time off. I mean, if he's not as healthy as possible, then I mean something went wrong along the way. But no, he's going to be 100%. I mean at this stage, and so long as there's no knock on wood setbacks during the spring or anything like that, and he'll be one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I already saw an interview with Whittingham where he's talking about their increased recruiting footprint in Texas as a result of now being in the Big 12 and how they've already started to change some of their recruiting approach, and They've gotten into Texas in years past, but I think that's just going to be more of a focus for them now. But, yeah, I mean, he's got to be as healthy as he can possibly be at this stage. He hasn't played in a long time, and certainly by the time the season rolls around.
Number 3, just following that same line of thought, how healthy is Jalen Daniels? Is this something that he can shake and move past, or is this going to be a lingering issue for him? He's one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the Big 12. And while I felt confident about saying that Shedeur Sanders is the best and most talented quarterback coming into the league, I still think if it came down to it and you said, you've got 3 minutes to go win the game, who do you want? I'd be like, I still want Jalen Daniels just because of what he can do and what he's proven over the years. But how healthy is he? There's no Jason Bean behind him right now that played really well down the stretch for the Jayhawks. Until he, too, also got hurt. But if Jalen Daniels can be healthy and play in the majority of their games this year, this makes Kansas a legit Big 12 title contender. And how healthy is he in the spring to help build on that and improve on that, or do they have to hold him out of spring, too, because he's still dealing with lingering issues?
Yeah, I should add with Cam Rising that in the same article I was reading earlier that Whittingham said he's a full participant in spring. So that answers your question about his health. But, yeah, with Jalen Daniels, that's a little bit more of a mystery. I haven't seen the latest update on him, I guess, from Lance Leipold whenever he's discussed it here recently. But that is a much bigger concern than it was last year when you had Jason Bean. I mean, Jason Bean was as solid and reliable as a backup quarterback as there probably was in the entire country, certainly one of the most experienced quarterbacks backup-wise in the entire country, and he held it down for you.
For them, yeah.
He held it down for you, a Texas guy, Jason Bean. But I think that's right. Yeah, he did a really good job.
Yeah, he went to Lake Ridge in Mansfield.
Yeah. But Jalen Daniels, as we know, is a really fun playmaker, and we just haven't been able to see that in a really long time. But I think everybody who's projecting KU next year is pinning that on Jalen Daniels being back to form from 2 years ago. And is he? I mean, we don't know. We haven't seen him in so long. But hopefully for the league, as far as an entertainment value goes, hopefully for Kansas as far as competitiveness goes, that he is back to being the Jalen Daniels of old, because that was a major frustration for them last year, was just his unavailability. And to have Jason Bean no longer there, that matters even more than it did last year.
Jeff Grimes, their offensive coordinator.
No. Number 2. Who still has the most holes to fill? Is it BYU? Is it Baylor? Is it Cincinnati? I mean, I'm leaning towards Cincinnati. I think Houston still has a lot to fill. But, when you're looking at the rosters of all these teams and the experience they have coming back, what they've done in the portal, I'm very curious to see the full spring rosters and where they have people slotted in the depth charts, just because even with the portal and you can kind of guess all this stuff, sometimes it's not as clear cut as you think. Hey, we're going to get this transfer. Oh, well, he must be the new starting linebacker. Well, no, he's a redshirt freshman. We're going to kind of keep him on the same track he was. He's just a better fit here, and look, or, in a case of a guy at Baylor like Josh White, who just hasn't, he was a big-time transfer there out of LSU and just hasn't really done anything but special team stuff in the years that he's been here. Is it one of those things? So we'll see. I'd like to see all that, but it'll be very telling who has the kind of the gaping holes or the things where you look and go, yeah, they probably still need to get a guy at this position.
From our over-unders, and we could probably do those in a better way, a more clean way, because it's hard rattling through so many dadgum teams, man. You got 16 teams. It's a lot to try and almost should break it up into 4 segments rather than 2, you know, to just be able to focus a bit more on the 4. But a couple of things that stood out to me when I left on Friday was one with Kansas. I was very confident on them going over, but I don't think I'm impacting Andy Kotelnicki and him not being a part of the show anymore there at OC, even though I do think Jeff Grimes will do a good job there. And with BYU, I said over, but that was one that kind of stuck with me, and I was kind of gnawing on that some more on Friday night. I don't know, man. I think they've got a lot to figure out still themselves. So, yeah, I mean, That's a good question. Baylor, Cincinnati, BYU, and throw in whoever else you want to. There's a lot of teams in ground to cover. I mean, what kind of holes does Arizona State still have? I mean, there's a lot of question marks still all across the league.
Yeah, Arizona State's a roster I'm curious to see because he brought in a lot of young transfers last year that weren't really going to play all that much anyway, but he had to fill out the roster. And Kenny Dillingham's a pretty shrewd recruiter and talent developer. At least he was as a coordinator. So those guys in year 2 would be kind of interesting. But
well, one of the things Craig just brought up, on Mondays during the college football season, because there's 16 teams, we need 4 hours. 4 per hour. We cannot scramble our heads, try to just break down 16 teams.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. The Big Ten is going to have 18, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so
good Lord,
do that you're going to have to divide that up. I mean, you're going to have to do that.
The Big Ten network's got 3 new shows because of it. Yeah.
Half the league is nearly as big as the Big 12 was for years.
Yeah. No, I get it.
You got 9 teams. The Big 12 was 10 teams for forever. And so, yeah, that's the crazy part of realignment is these much bigger conferences. But, yeah, I don't know that I weighed in enough of the OC impact there for Kansas. We'll see, obviously. I do think Jeff Grimes will do a great job, but I'm curious the next time we talk BYU of just – I know Sataki's not on a hot seat, but if they're not much better next year, does that put him on one? I don't know what his leash is like because
former player, all of that. You know what?
They're in a conference now.
So
you've got you've got to start showing that you can win this regularly when you don't get to pick your schedule like they did as much, or you don't get to
And I'll be honest with you, like Gary Bohannon doesn't set my world on fire.
No,
I mean he has hardly played
9 quarterbacks in the depth.
I know, but he's hardly played the last couple of years. So, anyways, those are definitely 2 candidates to wonder about. But you could throw a bunch more teams in there as far as holes to fill.
And I'm kind of of the opinion that Gary Bohannon's playing the wrong position now. But that he
some thought that when he was coming out of high school.
If he's healthy and can play, he can help your team on and off the field because of his presence. Yeah.
Number 1, what big spring transfers will happen? And this one
are those like
those are the
viruses.
Portals. Those are the portals.
We have talked about this 5 times.
No.
Those hypno-toad eyes. Yes.
Yeah.
Is that Emory?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Emory Googled a picture of Grimace's backside.
Okay.
That's what that is.
Those are the ones that catch my attention. So you're doing it right.
Well, next time you go to McDonald's, don't get a peek at Grimace's butt, but people will put you on a list. Number 1, what big spring transfers will happen? I think this year, and look, the transfer is, I do think that you'll see maybe more spring transfers we have in years past because of the way the coaching carousel fell so late, and particularly Alabama being involved in that if Alabama comes out of spring and Kalen DeBoer says, here's the 10 things we need, and it's probably pretty public about it, then there might be guys that are like, what now?
Yeah.
Alahuha? Yeah. Going.
You mean in Tuscaloosa?
Yeah. So I think that Alabama and the Saban thing kind of, because they lost a lot of guys that they normally would never have lost. But the filling that Alabama cavity there, and then whatever happens with some of the other schools as well, you're going through a spring practice with your coach. Like, look, UCLA and Deshaun Foster, like that happened last week. So all those things I think will affect it more this year because of the late part of the coaching carousel. I mean, theoretically, Michigan, I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case. They've already lost, 19 guys to the draft or whatever anyway. So it's not like they have a whole bunch of guys who would jump ship, and people feel pretty good about Sharon Moore. But those kind of things, because of the late hiring cycle this year, I think will affect the spring, and there could be some big names in that who ride through those first, 15 to 20 practices, whatever it is, and go, this new thing isn't for me.
Yeah, there will be post-spring transfers for sure. Some of them invited to go enter the portal and pushed into the portal, and then some that just decide, hey, this school came calling via my 7-on-7 coach or whatever, and there's going to be those instances as well. So, yeah, there will be some. Hard to peg who they might be. You're going to have some quarterback competitions play out because obviously some guys who don't end up with the starting jobs will probably start to look elsewhere or have people come in and knock on their doors. But, yeah, that's a question we have in front of us here these next few months for sure.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. Emory Winters dialing up 365 Sports with his magic. 10:30 tonight in the local CW. Garrett Ross, thank you for maneuvering. I got to give credit to Jack McKenzie, when I was at that that women's game, yesterday for the Britney Griner retirement of her jersey, he was busting his you-know-what, getting pictures. He put that up just now in the premium section on Sikkim365.com. Thanks to our sponsors. Tomorrow, we're back at 1 with the triple option. We'll be back at 3 with this show for Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina. Thank you, all of you. This is 365 Sports. I'm David Smoak. Good night.